to find out who's going to be cooking up that lemonade here as we jump in to lobby number 1 of our game number 1 of the DreamHack Open featuring Fortnite here in San Diego, California. Heat number 4, let's get right in to the hot and fiery heat.
Yeah, and I like this Blake and Bizzle drop right out of the gates, already kind of staying true to what they know. And a lot of these teams coming into zero builds last, you know, they like to go for those POIs. They switch up their drop spots because it's not exactly the same as builds. But Bizzle and Blake, they're going to their same split drop they go into all season long. They know those rotations. But what is some of the biggest things you're going to be looking at that switches up from the normal build mode into the zero builds?
That's a good question. And ultimately, it comes down to the core mechanics, right? Everything that drops in when you go into those movement kind of style. I know movement has changed quite a bit just of recently when you go from mantling to sliding to tactical spring like we see here on our screen from Lame. It all comes down to being able to utilize those core mechanics and put them to use.
That's me right now. What Lame is doing, that's exactly me. It's being annoying. You don't see those fireflies used very often. And even hits a beam with a Hail Mary pass. He at least got the first down on that one. Just enough damage to kind of scare his opponents off. Now they're going to be able to claim that POI. They already have the swords. And just because it feels like they're running, Lame thinks this might be weak competition. Something they can easily take advantage of. He goes in by himself. Suki is there to follow up rather quickly. But they got to reposition. They don't like where they're at. And they lost so much damage very, very early on. Wow, they're just dishing out more.
Not a good spot at all here for Lame to get up on top of the hill, but for the unfortunate downside of Sean, they're going to end up going down here. Kajitsu crossing is just a little bit less uncontested over here as shot will go down, but there's another team on the other side. This is the interesting part about Kenjutsu crossing. One of the newer, if not the newest POIs actually with this newest update of the chapter for Season 2 with the whole Mega City biome. As it's interesting how the POI gets split.
Yeah, no, especially since you have those kinetic blades that they spawn there every single time, every single game you do load in on the top, all the way through that massive structure that kind of spawns there, which is why you see so many teams. What looks like a 50-50, but in reality, for them, as long as they get the kinetic blade, they watch out where all these other teams are dropping at, that's at least something they can kind of work off of and begin to kind of build up their game plan, kind of going from there. Sonic and Clay trying to do the same thing, taking that early rift. For them, it's just about gathering that information. They're at the edge of zone. They know a team is nearby, but now taking that rift, they're going to get their exact location.
It's all about the precise movement here, especially with the shield bubbles that, honestly, Jacob, we've been seeing all competition long over the past 2 days. The duck and weave kind of movements between these shield bubbles and trying to see and force out anybody that tries to get close here as Clay and Sonic are playing with the food a little bit here with the opposing player Fly, but he gets knocked. And now that's going to be a pretty solid finish here for them to be able to get a quick elim. That's going to be plus 3 points. Now, reminder here, folks, like we had just mentioned, plus 3 points for an elimination. This is massive when you get these huge upscale off-spawn battles.
Yeah, and honestly, for Eros and Andrani there, he's so close to zone. It is going to be a one-tick. Clay and his team are going to have to disengage, so he could probably get the reboot back on up. Pablo, Wingu, and Bevy's toe, they're going to completely wipe the team out. No knock means no chance at life. And they're one of those teams, honestly, I expected a lot more from them coming in. I expect them to qualify maybe in heat number 2, possibly in heat number 3 when worst came to worst, especially with how well they performed in last FNCS. But then it kind of hits me in the back of my mind. That's builds. That's the regular mode. You could be a pro in that regular build mode, but not necessarily have the experience here in zero builds, and Bolts gets caught off guard. Chimp is just going to have to abandon him and now work his way around as a solo.
This, unfortunately, is the consistent story we're seeing develop so far throughout this DreamHack, is where a lot of our top-tier players of the likes of the FNCS, where we see them get top 10s, get all of the mix here in the top 5s, and yet they're still not performing up to the par of which we'd maybe expect them to be. So for players like Chimp here in this moment, when you have those zero-build veterans of Uproads and JG9, that is a rough battle to be going against.
Yeah, especially when he doesn't have a kinetic blade. It's going to be hard for him to kind of get in get the reboot onto Bolts and get right back on out. And it's honestly interesting to see because Bolts and Thoric, FNCS champions of the last West region that just went on, and they kind of split up, go their separate ways for the zero build mode. Thoric locked in his spot for Heat number 3. Even though these guys are friends, they play, and I expect them to do big things in this next FNCS Major 2. But at the same time, man, bragging rights among friends, that's something that I think Thoric will not let Bolts live down if he doesn't qualify here in this final moment.
And we mentioned it earlier, or at least it might have been SPG and Panda that mentioned it, but it's just about that little bit of bragging rights that gets you like, I got top 10 and you got 25th, so now I'm gonna be heading in. I'm just flexing my bicep a little bit. That's all.
Yep, the bragging rights, and honestly, Thorts and Bolts, they know to kind of troll each other just a little bit. Tomu and Echo just kind of claiming what's left of Brutal Bastion. And honestly, this is going to be a big claim, not only for the loot that they're about to get, but they're going to kind of get the location of everybody that is nearby in Brutal Bastion, including Chimp, who is by himself. Luckily for him, he at least at the very minimum finds a shield keg to get his shields right back on up before he does actually get marked on out. And you can see he's not leaving Brutal Bastion here because Bolts' card is on that other side, and he needs to be able to grab that before he kind of disengages or finds another way to kind of rotate on out and get Bolts back into the game.
The power of positioning here in Zero Build, we talk about it so many times throughout the history. Almost every single Zero Build tournament, it seems almost nauseating sometimes, where you think about, oh, they got to get this positioning to this positioning so that way they have this to be able to get a nice peek shot to get some damage, especially like in this situation where we see Beblos and Pablo Wingu now going up for the significant damage against a top-tier team of Threats and Co. As this is a dangerous battle here for the shield bubble back and forth here. Quanti and Threats, though, are now on the back foot as the knock goes through on to Quanti.
Looked like Pablo Wingu hit him with a little slide kick as well, bouncing him back. Probably making him miss a crucial shot there, but that was a 2v1 like he called out nonetheless. And that's where they're just kind of hunting, trying to look around, hop up and down, figure out where Threats is at. He found himself a little bit of a nook and cranny, kind of hide. And honestly, I don't think Pablo Wingu or Bebby's going to be able to kind of look in that direction, but Zone is pulling in. They're staggering themselves towards the outside. Threats knows this is still very, very early on in the game. It's going to be about a one-tick zone. He has more than enough time to get his teammates' reboots card. It's about surviving what Bebby's and his teammate is looking for, which is that information.
He looks to be going back for those heals just out in the abyss. Maybe find some slapberries to possibly heal back up. Get away from the distance. Get away from the battle. Surround yourself around a different kind of environment, because we know Threats, a player that has done significantly well throughout the past heats, throughout the day, throughout the last 2 days, as a 21st in heat number 1 and a 13th, barely missing out in heat number 2, and then doing well in 14th again, just barely missing out. However, Jacob, like we had talked about early, this time around, 14th place will be able to get you that qualifying spot into the finals.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge change up, and honestly a huge opportunity for somebody to sneak themselves in. And you got to realize how many times that I've seen a player kind of sneak in the 50th spot to qualify, the 49th spot to qualify, heck, even the 45th spot to qualify, and they end up with a top 5 placing in the finals. Top 5 kind of net you $5,000 or more each for you and your team, and obviously the higher you place, the more money you're going to line your pockets with, and that's something you got to really realize, because you got to get into the top 10 as well to get your spot in towards Gamers 8. There's so much to fight for here, and it starts in the heats, and with those 3 heats down, this final heat, these are the final chances that you have to really make up for lost time.
Jacob, what do you think the aroma is like in the room of the competition? All the competitors that are still left playing. Meanwhile, you have players that have qualified, just kind of hanging around. They're grabbing some pizza, and they're just chilling, hanging with the boys. But then you're just still there chilling, just hoping to play out your best 5 games to just get into that top 14. That's all you need to do.
It's sweaty. It's sweaty in there. Let me tell you, there's so much focus. There's so much perspiration going down. Hopefully somebody got some spray deodorant or something right now, because honestly, the nerves are going to get to a lot of these players. But even though the air conditioner is flowing, sometimes when you're playing, I don't know if you do, but when I'm playing, my adrenaline's pumping. It just gets hot, and I got to pump up the air conditioner, turn on the fan in my room. These guys don't have that same luxury, and that's something that I'm glad you're kind of asking to, and I can kind of point out here for a moment, is they're not playing from home. This is an in-person event. Every single one one of our competitors are playing on, what would some say, the biggest stage of their career so far. Some more, some less, but that does something that you don't typically have, that comfortability. You got to find it somewhere, and Trey might be one of those players as well. I expected massive things coming out from Trey. He plays every single different game mode. He plays squads, trios, solos, duos, zero builds. I would think he had some of the most practice, but right now in this live environment, I think the pressure has gotten the best of him in the last 3 heats, but I can almost guarantee you, I can almost promise that Trey is going to kind of lock it in here for the final heat.
I agree. You know, knowing Trey, I think he's just taking the first 3 heats to warm up. You know, going into tomorrow's finals, once he qualifies, you know, it's all going to be easy peasy. I mean, we know Trey, a collegiate cup champion, zero build in his own rights. This man is ready for all of the pressure in the biggest stages here on LAN. I mean, hey, anybody can do what Trey can do. It's going to be himself.
Yeah, especially with his teammate Statics. They have played together for quite a while, but Supkey, lame for eliminations. We saw them at the start of the game. Better check of them in the mid. They caught somebody alone in no man's land, and zero build. It's so hard, especially if you don't have that shield bubble. Volk's got to go ahead and try to reunite with them, and that's where they're going to try to use their powers as a duo. But the distraction from the outside of zone, that might have maybe saved them, or at least give them more time to work with, as it looks like Lame and Supkey are going to be focused on elsewhere.
Looking for the peaks. Supkey goes up for a little bit of an early movement. The card gets saved as well as the shield bubble, kind of backing it up a bit. And Lame and Supkey are just going to dip out. They say, you know what? We don't want the smoke. We're going to hold off just for a little bit. And then, in fact, they get a little bit of a bear truck to be able to hold down their defense. Meanwhile, the FNCS champion in his own right, back in OCE, coming up here under NA and is looking to show up. Volks definitely has a lot of pressure alongside Vortex on his back right now.
Yeah, I mean, you see them taking the rotation with the car and the bubble, the shield bubble to be exact, to try to get a little bit of a free rotator, as free as it is going to get, bypassing that weapons cache. Doesn't like that anything that they see there. They're not going to waste any time stopping for it. No, they got some more to go. Zero build, Goat, and Faith are there, kind of eyeing their prey, waiting for that shield bubble to go away, as the shots are going to go ahead and fire off. They get around the corner just the nick of time, but they're going to go ahead and try to chase him down. Volks is able to get the shots onto one thanks to the combat. The teammate for Zero build, Goat, is going to try to play this one out as a solo, and I got to agree with the attempt. The missed time and the misstep right there, it has costed them everything.
That was some beautiful shots there. Utilization of that combat shotgun. We haven't quite seen it too well utilized throughout the last 2 days of competition, though, Jacob.
No, not too much so far. I just think due to the weapon cache and the vaults and just the easy ability to get that legendary or even a purple Havoc or higher is just too strong. You kind of max that up with a Red R, some sort of SMG, which you've seen some of these teams do. It's just going to pack a punch and really deal a ton of damage to some of these players in the blink of an eye. And then you got to kind of add in the fact that a lot of them are holding that shield bubbles as well, so kind of flirting in and outside of those bubbles, trying to maximize the amount of damage while minimizing the amount that they're taking is huge.
That's exactly what Bevies and Pablo Wingy are now trying to do, but a huge knock, a massive finish goes out there, and now Pablo Wingy is out of this game. A reboot card will be selected up there by Bevies. However, this is not at all the position you want to be here if you're Bevies, especially with that Mythic Havoc Pump shotgun in the inventory. You know you can deal a lot of damage, but having to go back for this reboot is so crucially unimportant to the fact of the matter of this game. The well enough to do well is massive on your shoulders if you're Bevies.
Yeah, he almost doesn't have a choice here in this situation. He didn't have any heals as a solo, didn't have any shields, but he goes back knowing that these new zone changes, it's not going to deal a ton of damage, especially finding 2 different medkits. Him and his teammate are going to both be able to make it back in his zone, but their loot, their loadout, that's going to be the biggest thing I question once we tune into them later on in the game, how they are faring. As Toastius, Sacred. Toastius actually got to play with this guy about 2-3 weeks ago. He's actually one of those zero build grinders. He's kind of has a high positive spirit. He's always kind of cheering on his teammates, supporting everybody. So now it's my turn. Let me cheer him on. Kind of hoping for a great showing here. It does look like with 0 eliminations so far, they're playing for placement, knowing that whether if it's build or zero build, as the later this game goes, those eliminations will naturally present themselves.
Bizzle up on top of the high ground alongside Blake. Talking to Bizzle and Blake earlier in the day, just saying, hey, how are you guys feeling going into Heat 3? And they said very confident, but now having to drop down all the way down here to Heat number 4, They are showing up with all guns out, utilizing the Mythic Pulse Rifle alongside the Heisted Accelerate Shotgun, an exotic and a mythic in the inventory here for Bizzle. I can only imagine the powerful loadouts, especially if they put themselves in the right positioning for this game. You know what? I'm predicting it right now, Jacob. They're winning this game. Blake and Bizzle, they're winning this first game.
Ooh, that's actually going to be a big call. But honestly, I can definitely see it happening. I know Blake yesterday, with Bizzle going down, made a huge heroic play in a 1v2 situation to try to keep the game going. But this is where I know there's a lot of fans out there from American prospering to try to have a great showing. They're trying to cement themselves, kind of play a little bit more towards placement very, very early on as the zone kind of converges everybody closer and closer together. That's where you can see those opportunities arise for people to try to really catch somebody off guard. And with the zone continuing to pull north, but continue to pull towards the west, you see everybody sacrificing that damage in zone, going towards the eastern side of Slappy Shores, trying to go ahead and go where they think is the least contested part of the zone. But with so many teams having that be a similar strategy, that's not going to be as little contested as they think.
Exactly. We're seeing it right here at Slappy Shores, where we see 3 teams all just kind of waiting there, seeing how the zones develop as well as the player format. And this is what we see from some of the best teams, is how they develop that little bit of backside of zone knowledge, especially through the highest tier of competition, where you don't exactly need to be in zone right away. And this is also part of the adaptation to the new zones we have through the 12 zone system, where the early game sections through zone number 1 through 3 and then leading up to that 4 through 5 is a little bit longer.
That's where a lot of players can kind of sneak in, not having the best loot. Pablo Wingu and Bevies kind of switch things up. That Chug Cannon is actually going to play a huge role if they choose to keep it. I've seen some huge clutch plays already in heat number 3. People staying alive, kind of maximizing their heals. You can see the legendary Slurp Juice being grabbed by Pablo. They don't want to take the big pops because the HP is what's going to be so important here. Being able to stagger yourself in and out of the zone. Zuki and Lame taking control of this kind of prefab. There is no launch pad there, but it's definitely one of the highest buildings that is still left in the zone as they continue to chase down a few of these teams. That's Jack is Godly, Rotten Twinkies teammate. He's by himself. Rotten Twinkies, got to imagine that he's been taken out. These are 3 points that they're chasing down that they want to snatch up. Oh, he's going to be able to get out. For now, at least.
Jackie's unfortunate fall could happen here if he can't protect himself against Lame and Co., as this is a risky fight, and unfortunately the knock will go through. A chat favorite throughout the competition so far. But it's only a knock, no worries. Rotten Twinkies is there somewhere off in the distance, and I believe, like that solo clutch power that Panda and SPG were talking about, I believe it's up in the air. It's up in the air.
It definitely is. I thought Rotten Twinkies was down. That's why he was playing it out as a solo, but they got separated somewhere. But I like how he didn't try to backtrack to Rotten Twinkies, because that could have possibly got them both taken out. Now he's trying to go 2 for 2. Lame is hot on the heels of 1. Shield bubble after shield bubble just being wasted. But I don't know if Sazi's going to be able to survive this either way. They hit the dunk and find another elimination. Lame is picking them all up. And now they brought their total to 7. You got to imagine, with just elimination points alone, that is 21 points. And you kind of double that up due to placement and how long they've been staying alive in the game so far.
Lame is showing up here in heat number 4, game number 1. Making sure they put all the chips on the table and making sure that everything is on the line for this very breakaway opportunity at the moment for every single one of these players. Now, granted, this is just the beginning. Q's only just opened 30 minutes ago, and we still have 2.5 hours left of competition for these players to continue their games on. But remember, folks, top 5 games are all that matter. You can infinitely queue into as many games as possible, but it's all about how well you can do in your best 5 chances.
And that's why I think, a format like this, a tournament like this, especially with 4 different heats, it really does test the mental strength of a lot of these teams, a lot of these players, going through the couple heats already talked about. It's easy to kind of get down on yourself, but you got to realize as a Fortnite player with 4 different chances, one moment does not define you and your careers. You look at the feed, Blake just kind of going off, taking out a full duo, Flaws, and no build bear. American prospering they actually got themselves a good spot on the side, kind of can get taken out if that rock does get destroyed, but nobody's really making that a focal point. Everybody has their eyes looking forward towards the next zone to where they're going to have to travel to. And if you see the different terrains, the different elevations, that could be what they're looking to kind of take advantage of. A team is high on a mountain. They try to streak together in the forest of these trees to try to stay alive.
And Prospering and Marok are two of the most zero-build veterans out there. Absolute grinders in the scene. Have multitudes of those top 10, top 5, first place zero-build event placements. And now they're coming up here in heat number 4, ready to show the world what they've been waiting for this entire time. But a beam comes through on top of the mountain. This is not looking good for their positioning unless they can find some kind of crevice.
Yeah, Prospering has no choice here. He took too much damage early on in the fight. He's just trying to get out. Marek trying to be hot on his heels. Teamwork making the dream work, but he's going to get downed out on the tail end. Great shots by Volks to go ahead and get the knock. And this is where you see him taking his time. He's not getting greedy, just going to beeline, trying to get that refresh or little of it as you can. It's not as important as it would be in builds, especially knowing they were hot on the heels. There's got to be no shield bubbles left, and that's exactly why they're going back down the side of this mountain. Playing this terrain here towards this end game with so many different elevations is going to be absolutely insane to see how these teams play it out.
Pablo Wingu goes down for the second time in the elimination feed. A massive shot will go through. Azuki, Lame now continue to push their way through 11 eliminations so far throughout the game. They're showing the world right now what they're about, and some huge shots, some huge beams. Volks and Co are now in trouble.
You can see him just kind of take the truck, the semi, now back to the kinetic blade. Shield bubbles down. Vortex knows he has to try to abandon this one, and out he goes with a kinetic blade of his own. Volks is going to get cleaned up, but you realize as this zone is so small, so much late in this game, they're not chasing. They're not getting greedy for a lot of these eliminations, especially since they already have the position in the middle of the zone. They cleaned it out. They know not too many teams there, so that's what we're returning to try to get that extra bit of cover in that truck.
It could be so easy to lose your guard, lose your mind, especially with those mythics in the inventory.
Who's taking damage?
But when you have those ultimate positions of Quanti in the backside, as well as threats, you know those are some top-tier names you don't want to mess with. Hajj and Sescript on the back foot, essentially, here on the moment. It's a waiting game. It's a stalemate in this 8-zone pulling through.
Yeah, I see that exotic red eye getting picked up. Normally with these long distances, I don't like it too much due to the time to travel, but at close range, you can definitely try to beam somebody out. Well-placed headshots in the blink of an eye do a lot of damage. Quinn and Vert stacked up on top of Quanti and Threats. That battle's going to start out, and Quinn's going to try to get out alive, but the distraction is there. Vert and Quinn, they're trying to go ahead and take advantage of Suspect and Haji while they can. They have the time on their side. 3 more points and 1 more elimination for them, but that second player is going to be able to escape into the hands of Faith as Haji goes down as well.
They continue to lurk, waiting for anybody to take a wrong peek, a wrong shot. Kinetic blades off into the shield, bubbles out into the sky. Faith goes into the wrong position, right into the hands of Quinn Vert up on high ground. But now they have a little bit of attraction coming towards their side of the zone. One shield bubble drops through, and now it's the waiting game. The dip and dive weeds we've seen all throughout the last 2 days, and now Quanti and Threats, they've played this moment before. They've gotten victory royales in this exact situation. Now can they do it again?
Yep, but right now, the Kings of the Hill is going to be Quinn and Vert. They got that meat in the middle, the spot in the center of the zone. They're going back down to that loot. They definitely still have 2 different shield bubbles on the back of Vert. Lame and Soupkey, with all the eliminations they have, you got to imagine they have something, a trick up their sleeve. But Threats and Quanti, they don't know they're there towards the back, and that's going to be something they regret. Threats just gets beamed down, taken down, leaving Quanti by himself. Lame and Soupkey once again not getting greedy. They're not kinetic blading in the sky because they know if they do, that's going to be a third-party opportunity for Quinn and Vert. But that third party comes nonetheless. Quinn and Vert, they bought off a little bit more than they could chew, but Quinn comes out on top. Down goes Vert. 1v2 situation, and Quanti takes advantage, taking that VR.
What an incredible way to pull off the distraction there for Quanti and Threats. All the way from a 14th in heat number 3, now showing up here right off hot here in heat number 4.
Yeah, and even in heat number 2 yesterday, you saw them in a 13th place. You saw them in a final 3 position. They went out in 3rd, and that's what really costed them. They're making up for lost time, and you got to give them a huge round of applause. After that first game, Quanti and Threats have definitely built themselves enough confidence to continue on in this tournament. The one thing I always say, though, you got to watch out for, Lash. It's not always how you start, it's how you finish.
That's exactly right, and now we get to see Lobby 2, the second layer of teams that queued up here into this next game of their game number 1 on their side. We get to see the 13th place here from Heat 3. Pamstu and Fat showing up here, although they're playing with fire as they get 2 eliminations real quick at the cost of the knock of Fatch. However, now here comes the third party. Disturbish and Rip Brar, we have not seen them too much throughout the day, and now they're ready to take out the French-Canadian duo, and that's exactly what they do. That's a massive elim and a massive fall as well.
Yeah, and I know he didn't mean to do it on purpose, but using both of those shield bubbles before Disturbish and Rip Brar can go ahead and get that elimination, which means 2 less shield bubbles that they can use in towards this end game. That would have been massive if they were able to clean those ones up, and that's where Clarity and Caskers towards the outskirts, they're going to try to be one of the first teams in towards the zone. We know off the back of Clarity, they at least have 1 shield bubble to their name, a little bit of heals with the slap juice, so it's at least something to work with going against Kirby and Hector on the other side, and gets Disturbish and Rah to kind of round out our top 3 teams here in the game.
Hector and Kirby didn't perform that well over the last 2 hours of competition over there for Heat 3. However, this is now their time to show up, just like they did in Heat number 1. And they're bringing the power here. Disturbish back down to low HP. However, when you jump in a bubble with Casker and Clarity, the veteranship, the power that duo brings, that's a scary sight, Jacob.
Yeah, it's almost a lose-lose situation. You stay up, you get taken down by the Red Eyes, you go down into the hands of Clarity and Caskers. Neither one of those things is not a situation. You know, Rip Rah's by herself. Kirby and Hector, they want to try to clean up 3 more points, add that with the placement, and they're going to be able to find at least one. Caskers and Clarity steals away the other, gets that knock on to Hector, and you see them closing the distance in the blink of an eye, trying to use their double shield bubbles. All he has, Kirby lands a huge shot, but Clarity and Caskers yet again make the big plays to take the game.
The power of consistent performance here is showing up, folks. We see 15th from Heat number 3 show up with a VR right away, picking up right where they left off, as well as Threats and Quanti doing the same exact thing in their game number 1.
Yeah, it's very, very important for some of these teams that barely missed out multiple times at that. If you're Quanti and Threats, you know, no joke on them, but it shows how tough this competition actually is for zero builds. And that's why, like, a huge shout out one more time for DreamHack in San Diego, Dallas, and later on in the summer. And it kind of leads up into Gamers 8, that $2 million in-person event, giving these players that grind zero build something really worth playing for.
And I'm really interested to see how the zero build meta continues to develop. Like right now, we're seeing kinetic blades, shield bubbles, all about utilizing those legendary slurp juices. And this is where the high-flying players and actions, we're seeing who really defines and develops. So it'll be really interesting to see throughout the rest of the path to Gamers 8 how it all ends up.
Yeah, and honestly, you could think in builds, like that's going to be the skill gap, you know, building around, lasting the end game, and kind of playing that way. But honestly, the timing in zero builds has to be absolutely perfect. You think you're making a game-saving play or a big play at that, but you put yourself in such a bad spot. You can see it there again. Hector, Kirby, they kind of put themselves in a spot to get kind of extra tagged up, over tagged up by Clarity and Casters there at that tail end of the game, and it kind of cost them everything. So the timing of when you act has to be absolutely perfect in these zero builds, especially towards the end game. Otherwise, it's going to cost you everything that you fought for to get up into that point. And
we see it in those shield bubble dodge and weaves, right? Where they're like, oh, I got the shot. No, you got the shot. I got the shot. You got the shot. And ultimately, it's coming to how well you can dodge and weave your angles. But folks, we got to take a quick little break as we prepare up those battle buses for the next few games up ahead. So don't go too far. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, for the DreamHack Open featuring Fortnite. Cash Last joined alongside the wonderful Jacob_MVPR. We're here to bring you all the action. Once again, we're back from a quick break after an incredible game number one, Mr. Jacob.
Yeah, incredible game number one for a lot of these teams. Two different lobbies, and we've seen some players, even ones that didn't necessarily win the game, trying to take control by scoring a high number of eliminations, or even the ones that did somehow end up victorious. Clarity and Casker starting their day off right. They're one of the teams, even somebody in the chat agreed with me, thinking they did not expect them to kind of be in this fourth and final heat, but that goes to show two different things. You have to play well no matter what the competition expects, but it goes to show that everybody has been up in their game tenfold to really stop them from even being able to qualify. 36 teams made it in throughout the first three heats, and with this final heat, we got 14 more to go.
That's right, and I think with a duo, to touch on like Clarity and Casker, these are teammates that we've seen work together in many events, all the way back Chapter 1, Chapter 2. Like, this is a veteran duo, and to see them, a little bit of surprise, like you had mentioned, being here in Heat 4. However, I think that's where the chemistry is really going to come as a firm foundation to see how really strong that foundation is.
Yeah, you can see them kind of consistently improving each and every game, each and every heat that they're playing. You gotta think that they're barely missing out in some of these moments to qualify into that top 12. And we have like a little bit of living leaderboard going down. We talk about 10 games, 3 hours. It's constantly moving and jumbling. But as of right now, this is our top 8. Is there any players or teams that stand out to you the most?
Listen, I'm looking at Subki and Lame up there at that second place. Most eliminations that we see on the leaderboard so far of 13, an 88-point game. And to think about it as an overall wide scope, it's 60 points for Victory Royale. However, if you get 20 eliminations, you're already up there at that 60-point mark. So these elims, the teams like Ale King and P God, up there at that 10th place spot where we see just on the brink of that qual, up there at a massive 12 elims, it is going to be huge based off of those players that play that play style.
Yeah, but you can see Clarity and Caskers outside of the top 10, even with that Victory Royale. It just goes to show they might be playing a little bit more towards consistency, play more towards what they practice up to this point. And in that last hour, depending on where you're at in the leaderboard, you see them and probably a lot of our other teams begin to get a little bit more proactive, try to W key, pick up some more eliminations. We've seen it throughout the last 3 heats so far up into this point. And joining in on this game, it looks like Flaws is already down. No Build-A-Boy is immediately trying to create some distance between him and his opponents. And honestly, I see 3 arrows on the mini-map and has me smiling ear to ear. Do we have an NPC hired in the game? Or somebody just hiding?
It may be one or the other, honestly. I think it may just be someone hiring out in the little biz, maybe. I mean, we saw some pretty incredible NPC plays throughout the past 2 days.
Yeah, I seen Real Godzilla yesterday really terrorize the lobby, at least in the final moments. This time around, he goes down pretty early. Petra meets that same demise. 6-7 takes him down. That Mythic Havoc is one of the few weapons in the game. You know as well as I do. You test them out left, right, and center that can really one-shot these players. But in zero builds with the Overshield, you have to have at least some damage done to you so far, and 6-7 already took advantage of that.
Hey, max damage of 250, the most damage we've ever seen with a Havoc Pump Shotgun here in this season, which makes for some massive power plays like we just saw there. Just sending, hey, back to the lobby, my friend. Unfortunately, you got a GG's go next, and we're going to play out this game right here.
Lizzie and Jaxie, seen them kind of perform a little bit of glimpses yesterday throughout the day. Just weren't able to make it into that top 12, and this is where I'm hoping, you know, even if you didn't play well in those first 3 heats, as long as you're learning, as long as you're progressing, adapting your game plan as the day does progress. Seven and Junior Sheik, he saw them a little bit throughout that last heat, trying to up their game plan here as they see somebody spotted out as what they think could be a solo. That's Exy, that's Vubsky there on the side. It's a little bit of a snipe battle going down, just trying to get that one-shot headshot, get the knock, and probably close the distance with the kinetic blade. If they have one, he actually doesn't.
Look at that sniper in the inventory, though, Jacob. The exotic flame sniper, or dragon's breath sniper, excuse me, out in the inventory. And then you see that up against the heavy sniper It's all in the midst of a long-range battle, and you would love to see it, especially in this meta, where you're able to get those special weapons through the hollow chests and just being able to take those sneaky little shots. Now, reminder, folks, this sniper allows you to light on fire anything that has the ability to. So if there's a tree next to the player that they're using as coverage, they're going to be like, you know what? Your coverage is gone.
And that's something that you think a lot of these players may not necessarily deal with very, very often. You see the heisted accelerant exotic shotgun that gives a little bit of a speed boost that allows you to get some siphon along with it. And then the DPS gets more and more ramped up as it does kind of land those shots. So it's going to be very, very important. So if you don't have some familiarity with those, that you try to learn them very, very quickly. Trey is going to take down Sean, shields and HP. You can hear them trying to close the distance. First shield bubble's going down. Splashes. Moon's trying to create some distance. But look at the bob and weave in and out. Trey playing the distance and the shield bubble situation. Absolutely perfect to get 6 more points to their total.
Not a team you want to mess with. That's going to be Trey 509 as well as Statics. However, when an FNCS champion rolls up on your shield bubble, better get out of town, and better get out of town quickly. Evacuate, my friend, because Volks and Vortex are smelling shield in the water, and they want some of that hot and heavy action here.
This is all that's what needed, Lash. This is it. Vortex and Volks, they have them separated. Trade it and stick close to Statics. Now they're in 2 different 2v1 situations. Statics running out of the charge of the kinetic blade. Takes so much damage the last one ramps up, forcing out the shield bubble as well. That's the little moment, but you see, they just did so much damage. They don't want to let it go to waste, but Trey's doing his darndest to try to play defensive to allow some time for Statics to stabilize himself.
Both teams are getting desperate here, and this is a situation where you have to play off against your guard here. And unfortunately, Statics and Trey get pushed onto their final back foot and go over the top of the ropes as Volks and Vortex are going to win that fight. They take down that massive team here as they're going to be able to hold on to some 4 massive elims. That's plus 12 points, where Volks and Vortex are going to be coming into this game very hot.
Yep. They're one of the teams that you talked about FNCS championship on their side in the hands of Volks. So they have all the experience in the world here in that third party. Volks wasted absolutely no time. He got to the top of that hill before Vortex was even on his way. He knew exactly what the play was, but you got to give Vortex credit as well, following up almost perfectly, not wasting any time to make sure they solidified not one, but you talked about 3 different eliminations in that altercation, stealing one away from their opponents as well. Vovsky and Xe, you saw them kind of moments ago with that exotic sniper trying to put some shots off into the distance. And with 0 builds, that fire exotic sniper rifle kind of burning down any bit of cover, whether it's natural or not, is going to be huge to try to take these players out of position, whether they're in close or long range.
And I'm interested to see how this continues to develop throughout the day. And you see the loadout as well. They have another long-range weapon in the inventory of that red-eye assault rifle, which really begs the question, what exactly is the true meta of 0 build so far this season? Because to be quite honest, Jacob, I haven't necessarily seen a true constant of pure loadouts.
No, I've seen Mavens, I've seen Havocs. Today alone, we've seen some combats as well. Yesterday, I peeped. I saw some Red Eyes and some exotic SMGs, the 2 different variants. So we're seeing a lot of different combinations. And honestly, I think we're just like kind of in the infancy of what 0 build and the potential of this game mode. And that's why I'm just ecstatic, you know, to kind of see things kind of continue to progress in the world of Fortnite, giving kind of players that may not necessarily like the regular mode a chance to shine in a different light, and you're kind of really seeing it. Some players that don't necessarily get to the top of leaderboards are doing more than just that here in 0 builds, and then even some players are kind of mix and matching on these teams. Acorn and Mr. Savage, one of the ones I'm most excited to see play on Sunday. They qualified in our first heat.
It's going to be very interesting, and you know what, Jacob? We get to live in this moment. We get to see it all just unfold right before our eyes and develop the stories of the players. Like, who knows? We may have some kind of 0 build championship champion, you know, being crowned, and we're talking about him right here today.
Yeah, and these are opportunities because this is the first of 3 different DreamHacks to qualify for that Gamers 8 in-person event later this year, and this could be an eye-opening for some of these teams. You could have Epic Well spotting somebody out. Reap may want to change his teammates. Who knows what may happen after this event and the next DreamHack rolls around. We could go through a roster mania and a huge shuffle of teammates going down, because honestly, I talked about it. Bolton Thorix, their teammate during FNCS, they split up for this event thinking they had better chances with different teammates. Honestly, you can't necessarily blame them. Zero Builds, it's a whole different environment and a whole different beast.
That's right. We saw one of them even qualify through the past heat number 3, that being Thoric and Blur. Yep. We saw them take away that 4th place spot. However, one of the duo that you mentioned did not find themselves qualifying through, and that was going to be Chimp and Bolts. Now, granted, one of the part of the duo that was an FNCS champion, the last one on NA West. Now, the question becomes, can we see one of those duos show up here now?
Wow. Great shots going off in the distance, and this is one of those teams. A reboot went down for this team to get back up as a full-on team. I think it was Flaws that was kind of taken down early on. No Build-A-Bear disengaged from a fight, and you can see that they're have scraps, 19, or I should say 18 different bandages, 1 med kit. I like this from Flaws, though. Instead of just carrying an empty slot, he's at least working with something. That's going to allow him to kind of stagger himself out of the zone, live and survive much longer if a team begins to focus them out towards the backside. But you got to be careful. No Build-A-Bear does have that kinetic blade. Too much distance between the two could be their demise. But Z-Link and Krizix are trying to cause demise of another team. They take down both Blizz and Jaxi to add 6 more points to their total.
Z-Linky and Krizix are now just showing exactly what this duo can do here in this lobby. Like you'd mentioned, 7 eliminations so far on the board, and they keep on going, utilizing those kinetic blades to push the fight forward. However, they're going to use a little bit more of a still combat as they utilize this complete big bush to now back themselves with that full truck next to them. And now they're just going to be able to hold down this positioning across anybody else because they know, hey, we've got cover, we've got mobility, and as well, we have the elims to back ourselves up, so we know we got that confidence right behind us.
Yep, confidence is key here in this scenario, and you kind of see behind him, somebody else is kind of hiding as a solo. That's Lavish, Lily, and Benz taking out Dubboog. Trying to get the shots on the Ben Pen. Doesn't really want to let him escape, but with over 1,000 HP really on this card, they really have no choice but to let him disengage. And Ben Pen just traveling far enough just to get into a bush. I'm not sure the possibility of a reboot, but I got to imagine he's at least contemplating that being a possibility.
And just a reminder here, folks, as you can see on your screen on the just middle of the top left there, Heat 4 closing here in 2 hours and 12 minutes in counting, as this will continue to pop up on your screen throughout the competition here in Heat number 4. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that to see when the queues are going to be closing and when you need to start paying attention even more to see who the final 14 players will be going to the finals.
That's gonna be huge, because honestly, 14 just kind of leaves it open. We've seen so many nail-biting finishes throughout our last 3 heats, and that was for only 12 different spots, with 2 more spots opening up, which means we're going to get even more close finishes when it does come down to the wire. But Lavish, Lily, and Benz, at one point in time, they were definitely in our top 10, trying to play this one out and kind of reclaim that top spot. Kind of look at the feed just a little bit. We knew Dubboog did get taken down. Prospering is going to take down Krizix. A lot of action going down around the map as Alpha Bear and Renegade, they're just trying to get themselves a comfortable spot in towards zone. And Krizix, that was a player I'd called getting knocked down early on. That's American Prospering trying to take advantage, but they're just a third party. Somebody else closed the distance. Shield bubbles being wasted. Luckily for him, he does at least have one more to try to keep himself on the run, but they're closing the distance from all other angles. That's Ace Sky and Cupsy able to finish off one more duo team, 6 more points to their total, bringing their elimination point total to 9.
And that's what happens when, unfortunately, your cover gets blown and you gotta try and go off the script, off the rails. But Ace and Kupski were there, ready to show up, and were prepared for the battle up ahead. They made sure they utilized those shield bubbles absolutely to perfection. And folks, if you're taking notes, you're writing down anything that you could take away from these best players, it's from players like we're seeing on the screen of Volks, of Vortex, that are showing up right now.
when you have two FNCS champions from different regions, and I think Volk's kind of coming over, competing a little bit on East for a little bit. It just goes to show they have so much experience between the two, and I think that's why I'm kind of looking out in the distance, trying to get some engaging from yesterday's heats into today's. A lot of people were surprised, he as well, and that's where a stacked event like this, as the DreamHacks will continue to stay stacked throughout the year, it's almost every single heat you will have surprises that won't make it in to that finals. And that's why this going down to heat number 4 for some of these teams, it's their last chance to qualify for that $250,000 opportunity tomorrow.
The last-ditch effort, it all comes into this very moment where we see these lobbies. These are just the beginning points. Like you had mentioned, it's not exactly how you start, it's how you finish. But these are the ultimate foundation, right? You want to build your foundation with some logs. You don't want to build it with sticks at the moment. Like, you got to make sure you're building everything in the correct ways, in the correct firm foundations, where we see Flaws and Bear, they're doing exactly that, except, you know, the foundation's that bush, you know?
Sometimes you just gotta take what you can get in a lot of these situations, even if it's barely living on a prayer. Shots continue to get tagged off in the distance, and they're doing just anything that they can. If you look, about 4 teams directly in towards zone, a 5th one if you count the solo. And that solo has been there for quite a while, not really wanting to move, not really want to give up his position, as XE comeback is just getting taken out by Prospering America, trying to have a fantastic game. They already got 3 eliminations and kind of bypassing all the chaos to try to bounce that and combine it, I should say, with placement points.
We've seen them in their game number 1 end game. An unfortunate fall. They caught themselves out in a bad position, unfortunately, here. But now we get to truly find out whether or not something can be there. Something can be possible for this duo to just shine bright.
The bubble going away. Nice job by Prospering, honestly, using that heavy snipe to try to take down a little bit of cover that was being used on the other side. Now his position is being given up, and this is where you see he has some of the farthest distance to cover before they can make themselves a safe spot in towards zone. A few other teams don't have that comfortability just yet as it continues to converge. Everybody on the western side that isn't in zone just yet better have some shield bubbles, because this one is going to get rough.
Gonna get rough indeed, as we see Volks utilizing those beautiful mythic pulse rifles ready to show up. We see Sweaty here waiting to take the peak shot, but it does not work. The cover gets blown out. However, Six, the teammate, gets a huge knockdown on the Bear and a massive shot with that Havoc pump shotgun.
And honestly, instantly you see him trying to throw down that shield bubble. I don't think anybody heard it exactly where that fight was going off, and they're inches from the zone as well. This could be an opportunity to kind of come back from the grave and make up for lost time, as Volks finds another elimination onto Professor Shakes, bringing the team's total all the way up to 9. But the shots are coming in from Merrick and Prospering from bush to bush. Everybody's position for now, at least for the most part, is going to be unknown. They do have themselves a position inside of the zone, using that natural terrain towards the right side, seeing Chimp trying to travel in towards the left. And this is where you got to ask, is it worth to try to go after Chimp, add that elimination total to give up that good positioning?
Vortex and Volks move in, and they want this fight, and they want these elims bad. They get a huge knock and a huge elim, taking down Cupsy and Co. as they now get pushed back to the lobby. That's elim number 11 here on the total for Volks and Vortex, and now they continue to look for more. The massive beams come out of the sky. Count it, another one. That's number 12.
And bringing us into our final 3 teams here in towards the end. And you got to imagine the amount of heals on the other side for Volks and Vortex. They can kind of bounce in and out of the zone. They don't have very much to worry about. They can even wait to the last possible moment to the 2 other teams begin to engage, or they can kind of start it off themselves. 160 damage from Volks with that overclock pulse rifle. Scaring everybody, giving them something to kind of watch out for, forcing out these shield bubbles, and honestly, being the last team to harness any of those shield bubbles is huge. It's going to give you so many options to work with, but the positioning right now from Vortex and Volks has to be some of the best in the game left over.
The waiting game, it now commences here. Choke Splash being popped, and now they're just going to hold off their fire, but Sweaty and Six want to push this one fast. Huge tags come through, waiting for that chance just to them get out of this zone. They're waiting for that night zone now to close through, waiting for the reveal. 39 seconds will now start moving, and this is where Prospering, Marok, 6 Sweaty. Someone has to make a big step here, and Marok and Prospering are now become the focus of the lobby.
One gets down right there. America trade for trade. Everybody's actually going down. Volks and Vortex, the only duo standing. They're trying to clean this one up. 8 eliminations and 6 respectively. Our final 2 teams. Sweaty's trying to go out for a heal off towards the outside of zone. Does he have enough heals? Med-Miss is being ticked away right now. Zone still has to fully close. They're going ahead and kinetic blading high in the sky, trying to gather the information of where he's at. Spots him at the tail end. Volks is going to go hunting, and he hunts for the VR. They get 15 eliminations, Lash, and the victory royale to finish that game off.
Consistent, consistent, consistent. That's what I'm talking about. Volks and Vortex showing up. 15 Elims like you had mentioned, and now they just continue that placement. They were in the top 10 heading into that game, and now that placement continues to rise.
That was at 105-point game for Volts and Vortex. You talked about the 15 eliminations. That is 45 points alone, and then the 60 points for the VR. That is going to be a big game for anybody to try and beat. If they can mimic that, you got to imagine 5 games at 100 points. If they can somehow make it happen, that's basically be a guaranteed qualification, setting themselves up right for this one. Talk about the living leaderboard right now. I'm gonna go right down to 12. 117 points after the first couple of games is gonna be the threshold.
Let's see if a fan favorite of Loki and Ethan's can make something happen. I know the chat has just been absolutely blowing up over the last 2 days over that duo, but they're stuck. They're lost in zone. But I wouldn't call them completely lost cause yet, as they still have that legendary slurp juice in the inventory, make moves. The reboot will happen. Don't worry, chat. Don't worry. They'll be back in this game, and I can almost guarantee you. I see it. I see it. You know, like Panda and SBG were talking about the script. You know, I got it. Don't worry. Don't worry.
The chat has the chance to really write the script for them. Keep your support going. Give them that energy that they need in order to keep propelling themselves. Rotten
That's
Twinkies
right.
and Jack, another huge favorite, and another great loadout right on our hands. You see the 3 different shield bubbles, legendary slurp juice. He has the mythic havoc and that gold red eye. He can pack a punch at a moment's notice. For them, honestly, lads, their only worry is going to be positioning from here on out and not getting cut behind enemy lines and in the focus of the zone.
And right now, they're set up for it. Like, look at those hills. Look at those valleys. Look at those mountains. They're all maneuvering around, ensuring that, hey, we can take this position. We know our bush spawns. Now let's see if we know our environment spawns, essentially, to where we can take those little height plays, take those little peaks, so that way we can utilize the best of the ability when it comes to that legendary red eye assault rifle, being like, hey, you want to go up into the sky utilizing that rift, you get beamed. You want to peek your head over the top of the hill, you get beamed.
I'm gotta watch out. Don't peek your head at all. As Lash said, you are going to get beamed. As we jump on board Quantity and Threats. And what happened here? Suspect and Haji were looking so good and so clean moments ago, but as we jump back on board, Haji was taken out. I was talking about how good their loadout actually looked, but Suscript, you got to imagine, with the legendary slurp juices, some splashes, he could be going for that reboot card, especially now that he's picking up even more. Definitely has a lot to work with. I was about to say, he could pop one of the slurp juices, drop a couple splashes, and try to go for the reboot to keep himself in the game. His tank gets taken down, trying to close the distance to Tostius, Waffle, and Sacred, who have themselves a prefab. I would call it, you know, a safety net for them, but they got so much distance to cover before they're actually in zone. They're going to have to leave the safety of that house sooner or later.
Hey, you see that zone right up at the top right, or just on the bottom right, if you will, as well. But that zone pushes up towards the top right, and you see a bit of that Citadel water, which means we're going to get a little bit of that taste of which we saw, except this time around, this is zero build. This is full water zone, essentially, of something like we may have saw in the beginning of Chapter 2. But this time around, the script is a little bit flipped here.
Yeah, hopefully they can get some sort of car. Somebody has it on their back. They can use that car with the bubble. We've seen the combination of the different vehicles with that bubble to try to create some sort of safety. I think that's one tool if they can. Obviously, shield bubbles are going to play a huge role along with those kinetic blades. But Loki and Ethan traveling close by Tostius and Sacred. But Sacred and Tostius choosing to use those kinetic blades very, very early on, while Loki and Ethan are probably choosing those to when they end up in a tight spot.
Let's see if the crowd can erupt after or once this duo can get a couple elims, but no, they're playing with a bit of fire here, but the choke splashes go through. Shield bubble protects them just for a little meanwhile here. but they're going to have to dip all the way towards the left side of zone just to find a little bit of a safe position. However, they're on a side in no man's land where you do not want to see them at all.
And you see the tree trunk kind of getting chopped down and pushed around them, trying to displace them all together, kind of pop them out. They still got a little bit more distance to cover right into the water. And that's why I talked about saving those kinetic blade charges very, very early on when you saw them rotating. Were so huge for them to get into this point, because if they didn't have those charges, they probably would have been caught on the edge of that island trying to escape and probably getting taken down.
Lurking, waiting for anything. Quanti up above. We saw them take home a victory royale already so far. Suscript, we saw in a very good position earlier, just 2 minutes back in this game, and now, unfortunately, we'll end up going down there. A team we saw end up coming so close throughout the past heats will unfortunately go back to lobby. However, Zik and his teammate are now going to wake and move, but when you have this amount of top players, Blake, Bizzle, Jackies, and Rotten Twinkies in this lobby, it's going to be a rough battle, tooth and nail, for these final moments.
Yeah, Tamaki goes down, leaving Zikti by himself, and you can see immediately trying to get out with that kinetic blade, something you see all too often. Even though there's a slurp barrel right next to him, he does not want to give up his position here in the game into the top 10. There's so many points still up for grabs, about 18 more points that he could still gather in this position if he just gets second place. That's going to be the biggest thing. 19 if he's able to get that first place spot. Blake and Bizzle, they're going to be after that as well, but for them, they got 6 eliminations and they're a full duo still left in the game. But you can see Pablo Wingu and Bevies, Quanti and Threat, you see Quinn and Vert, so many of our top teams still left in the game.
Get ready, folks. We have Blake and Bizzle here up at that 4th place spot at the moment, just on the bottom left here of your screen. Now remember, this is only the just beginning of these players' placement. We're only about 3 to 4 games in for majority of these players up here at the top of the leaderboards. Therefore, for these players to set the good foundation down for the beginning of this tournament right now, we're only just above an hour in, and this ultimately is what matters the most.
Yeah, I like the positioning right now from Pablo Wingu and Bevies. They have the high ground. Even though they have to rotate out of zone, they're going to be able to spot every team that is going to be one of the first ones there. They have those roofs. They can look like the superhero of sorts in New York, jumping from rooftop to rooftop. A little bit of a mistake. They're coming out from Blake, not once, but twice, and it's going to cost him everything, Lash. He goes down, unable to use that third charge. That's Toastius Waffle and Sacred. They're going to really take advantage, and he had a good amount of loot from shield bubbles to actual heals to try to keep Sacred and Toastius Waffle not only alive, but replenish them all together. Keep them in the game, but one fight to the next. Bizzle peeks around the corner. That's Kanu. They're on the other side. Bizzle even popping shots in through the window. Doesn't want to let this elimination escape. That's a good amount of loot that Bizzle can possibly pick up.
And now he's going to be able to hold down this ground as well here. Waits for another player. Says, you know what? I'm picking up Elim after Elim after Elim. And I just do not stop. Bizzle, now 5 eliminations, is ready to take over this endgame.
Somehow Bevies does go down. That's Quanti and Threats that really make him pay. They're out for revenge here in this final heat. They don't even think they should be here in this game at this point, but Vert and Quinn, we've seen them kind of outlast some teams before. A couple of top placements on the game. Now can they finish this one off? They're trying to use that rooftop, combine that with a shield bubble. Threat's kind of saving his for the last moment as well into the top 5. Quanti being able to kind of use his. Bizzle trying to out-heal towards the backside of zone, and this is where it is going to get interesting because he has a kinetic blade. People can forget he's here, and then he can strike when they don't expect him.
He's waiting, searching for anything. The heals are massive here for Bizzle, but only has a Chug Splash left to his right, so he's going to have to get into zone now or never. 5 left remaining. Waits for the beam up into the sky, but just unfortunately cannot connect. Waits for Threats and Quanti there on the edge of the roof. They're playing the heal game as well, while Bizzle now has some competition out here towards the back.
Yep, out of heals. Threat's going to have to go. At least he has that one shield bubble from the top. Tries to hit a dunk, but a good shot. Not going to be enough, though. Into the fray. In and out. Down goes Quinn. Going to be up to Vert if he can save it, but Bizzle from the sky. He's trying to make it last over towards the very end. 7 HP, but it's not enough. It's Vert and Quinn who take the game.
What an incredible third party to end that one out. Bizzle, my man, what a high-flying sky action just takes up and says, big shot. Let me take up into that top 2. That reminded me a little bit of the past of his World Cup qualifiers, playing a bit of that heel strat, and then coming in the final moments. What an incredible play.
No, it definitely was. And you got to imagine how much better it could have been if Blake. Two different mishaps going down when he's trying to kinetic blade along with Bizzle to safety. Unfortunately, he gets caught out. He gets taken down, but Bizzle doing a good job. We talk about him kind of being an OG. He's been almost every situation up until this point, and it's kind of showing. As Petra goes down, these are some of the replays that we've seen very, very early on in the game. That was huge for some of these teams. This early game to get some of this loot very, very early on. 2 legendary slurp juices going over, and this is Volks and Vortex on their run to their VR.
And this is the ultimate kind of intricacy of what we see in the development of these games, where we see Six and Sweaty in the final moments of their lobby cleaning up elims, making sure that they push out and take a little bit of a risk for the best positionings in those moments, because ultimately you got to be able to take a risk to be able to get that big reward.
No, you definitely do. And you know, 2 FNCS champions over here, 15 eliminations, putting up massive numbers. And you see Bizzle in this situation, honestly, you know, some players won't even take those shots shooting through the window. Bizzle realized you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. He just was firing away, able to get 1 elimination. You see him just not giving up. That's 6 points there towards the tail end without Blake there. So you got to give him a huge round of applause. You got to imagine what those points are going to do to kind of get themselves into the top 14 at the end of Heat 4.
And talk about an incredible final moments. You see there, Bizzle dropping down from the high-flying sky, just picking up every elim possible. However, even in the midst, it wasn't Quanti. It wasn't threats there in the final moments to pick up another VR. Nope, Vert just says, you know what? You guys forgot about me. I was chilling out here in the waters. Boo, I scared you. I took on the VR.
Yeah, just trying to do quick math. Second place for Bizzle, combined with, I do believe, 9 eliminations for the team. That was about an 8-point game for Blake and Bizzle. We talk about the living leaderboard. That kind of, for now at least, that bumps them up into second place. Looking comfortable, but we've seen kind of a lot of teams kind of lose their footing through the second half of the day. But as we get our second half ready of the day, don't go anywhere as we take a quick break. We'll see you on the other side.
in the heart of an ancient desert. The land of heroes awaits. Prepare yourself. To witness feats you never thought possible. Records will be broken. Legends will be born. And fortunes will be made. The stage is set. The largest esports and gaming festival the world has ever known. Ready or not, here it comes. Gamers 8, the land of heroes.
The land of heroes indeed, and the stage is set where it all starts right here, as this is just the first qualifier to be able to head up all the way up towards that Gamers 8 final scale with an amazing prize pool. But if you want to check out more information, make sure you check out that link, gamers8.gg, to check out all the information. If you want to go, check out ticket information, everything. It's all right there.
I might have to go and check it out because I might have to go and see what the noise is all about. $2 million up for grabs and a chance to crown yourself the world's best zero-build Fortnite player. That's a huge amount of bragging rights. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we can get there, we got to finish here with DreamHack San Diego featuring Fortnite, to where we got our leaderboard on screen. It's no surprise after that huge performance early on. Volks and Vortex, they have first place for now.
They're showing up and they're saying, OCE on top here, but it's a completely diverted leaderboard. I mean, you see NA East representation, or former NA East representation, of Bizzle and Blake there in second. Then you see EU representation there in third, of Pablo, Winyu, and Bevies. And then you see NA West as well as NA East combined into North America representation of fourth place. But then, Jacob, you see all of our teams that are just on the brink of that top 14 qual.
Yep, unlike yesterday, to where it was top 12 making it in, including heat number 3. It's top 14 this time around, and that's going to be Statics and Trey at 157 points. They have 16 eliminations, and they're just 1 point ahead of 15th place. It goes to show that we're going to continue that trend of DreamHack here from our first 3 heats, to where we are going to have a photo finish going down to that last and final game more than likely.
I'm ready for it. And folks, if you've already seen heats number 1, 2, and 3, let me tell you, folks, you do not want to miss when it continues to fold on through to the photo finish, like you had mentioned there, Jacob, of what heat number 4 is going to bring. I can only imagine.
Yeah, and you already saw the leaderboards as we get into the next game. So those are going to be some of the teams that I am keeping my eyes on, the ones that are on that bubble. We talked about Statics and Trey, and a couple teams that are nearby as well. We've seen Faith doing it. Suki and Lame's going to be one of those teams on the inside, but they get taken down by a team on the outside to start this one off. A trade of 1-for-1. Lame versus Krizix. Winner of this keeps their game alive, but the high ground's going to go to Lame, continuing to put shots from above while they're inside of Storm with no heals in sight.
Let me tell you, this is not where you want to be. We see this time and time again through many different tournaments where you see those top echelon teams up in the business, and unfortunately somebody comes along and wants to snag that positioning away, and it gets real dangerous. But fortunately for Lame, he does have high ground against Krizix. However, Krizix has got that med miss, the shield bubbles to back himself up, and now the key card as well, which is ultimately what you're fighting for here at Shattered Slabs.
Yeah, this is a huge moment for both of these players, with Krizix and Lame, because not only are you able to get the reboot up, you're able to kind of get that vault. You're going to get a lot of heals, a lot of different legendary slurp juices, and that's where Lame's not only is going to get that reboot, he's going to get that vault card as well. And if he has a chance for survival, which it looks it does based off of that mini-map, he's going to get rewarded tenfold for this effort.
And folks, you may have just seen that little bit of a reminder there on the top left. As we saw, we have 1 hour and 45 minutes left of queue going on throughout the rest of the tournament. And now, as we speak on that leaderboard, Krizix goes down the midst of a big beam. However, that seems to be affecting another one of those top players that wants to stay up at the top, and Lane's back in trouble.
Yeah, but he only has a few seconds to kind of make a play like this happen. He doesn't have any HP heals. He finds a big pot, but even that's not going to be enough. Time is ticking. It is of the essence, and he's going to go fishing. Anything's better than nothing here in a situation like that. I say that, and I just thought to myself, if he gets a shield fish, oh, did he get Jelly Angler?
I think so.
Wow, what a save. An augment to save the day. Who would have thought?
That is what you call just ultimate preparation that saves you for those kind of situations. As we see Fletch, a team that got a Victor Royale in their last heat, is unfortunately going to be taken out by Flaws and Bear, as they've now wiped on through and say, you know what? This is our positioning. We're going to take this over. However, they have Chimp and Co. dancing out, and they want a tango here, taking off the shots. But Bolts and Chimp are going to continue to push this fight. Flaw, low HP, and now will drop down to fall damage off to the top of the cliff. That truck went from a very big help to now, unfortunately, being the downfall of that team.
Yeah, Bolts and Chimp, they absolutely need to begin to ramp things up. First two games on the day, a 26th and a 25th place, really kind of dragging them down in terms of points. Since then, they have progressively better games up until this point, and that's why you see them beginning to get aggressive. And we've seen it throughout the past couple of heats leading up into this point, depending on where you're at in the leaderboard, because we're just 2 minutes, 2 minutes away from the official halfway mark in this. Depending on where you're at in the leaderboard, you have no choice but to start getting eliminations.
High flying action. We've seen it so far all the way through the competition, utilizing these kinetic blades. And let's see if High Sky and Cam can be one of those teams that start to make some big pressure arise, as we see Lily and Benz lurking on the bend of this mountain essentially at the moment. And it's all about the angle of peaks that these teams go through, waiting for one to spot out the other. High Sky gets really close. Who's going to make the first move here?
Right there, they have the floppers, so they can kind of stagger themselves out. Of course, the other team in which you're talking about to try to make that first move, Cam Nuts and High Sky, trying to get themselves in a much better spot, as Cam Nuts is going to go down. High Sky realized that, and honestly probably got the call from Cam as well. Go ahead on without me. And a lot of time in this game of Fortnite, no matter what mode you're playing, there comes a point where if your teammates do go down, you're going to have to abandon ship and play it out as a solo. They're in the top 13 here, hiding in the tree at the top of it like a Christmas ornament. We've seen it so many times yesterday, and I've even seen a player pick up a VR by hiding in the tree for so long.
Listen, maybe Laser Beam was right back in the day. Maybe camping in a tree is the right way, you know? Maybe, you know, Jacob, you think we could win a tournament camping in a tree?
I think so. I think so. It might take 4 heats, though. Let me warn you. It's going to be very, very stressful. You heard me in the Creed Club playing solos. We're going to have some stress. But fun times. Let me tell you, we're going to have all the laughs in the world. As Clips and Sabotorian with their last chance, trying to take out Lame. Saw him lose his teammate early on. For now, it's just going to be over shield getting scraped away. Not too much going to be lost, but from the side, Cupsy and Ace just put out a huge amount of damage on the Sabotorian. Shields and HP getting dropped, and they're hot on the heels trying to finish off this elimination. That's a good amount of damage to let go to waste, and there goes the knock. Clips now, just like so many other players we've seen throughout this weekend, is going to have to do it as a solo.
Clips is a player that we've seen do so well throughout the scrims up into this event, but unfortunately just hasn't exactly found the footing. And hopefully, as a solo, like we saw from Bizzle in the final moments of that last game that they played out, hey, maybe he finds a bit of that solo magic.
And let me take a moment to shout out the chat right now. The amount of support you've seen. So some of these players, absolutely insane. Lash, you can't imagine some of the times that I've seen. Some players are just simply afraid to be fans. Let me tell you, I'm one of them that's the exact opposite. I let my fandom show, from the casters, from the analysts, to the production team, to even getting a chance to cast with someone like yourself, one of the most passionate people I've seen in the Fortnite community. This is a blessing for me, being able to see who are the last 14 teams to qualify with none other than yourself.
Hey, likewise blessing as well, brother. This is going to be one worldly of a show to close out here of the heats, as here in heat number 4, Vortex and Volts have been showing up, and they've been getting that fandom support here in the chat all throughout the day. Let's see if they can make another one happen. We've seen them take a Victor Royale home on their own so far throughout the day, but now it's going to come up against the pressure of players like Ace, like Cup, like Fatch, like Chimp. Players that will not back down no matter who's on their up-and-coming shield bubble.
Yep, see a lot of heals for Lavish Lily. No kinetic blade, though, is the only thing that's going to worry me. But only a little bit, because they're already in zone. They got themselves a nice pile of leaves. They probably raked it up for safety early on in the game. Got to be careful, though, when you're using that chug gun, because that's going to be a dead giveaway when it comes to your position. Clips hiding on the other side. We've seen his teammate go down. Spot out the distance. Flaws went down as well. No build to bear. He's getting sprayed at. Nothing's really going to hit. Possibly just enough on the overshield. That's going to force him really to get out of position. Fatch lost Pamso. Chimp lost Bolt. So many teams losing their teammates. So many players losing their teammates. But Volks and Vortex, one thing to point out, in Heat 3, when they failed to qualify, getting 21st place, in their best 5 games, they had 38 eliminations. So far, they've only played 3 games, and this is their 3rd one. They have 27 eliminations. They've been progressively getting better and realizing with their backs up against the wall, now or never.
Big steps is all that matters in the eyes of Volks and Vortex. As Jackson J, though, this is a new duo showing up. Reminder, you can switch your duos between the heats if you had not qualified. So Jackson J decided, you know what? It's time to swap things up. And now they're ready to show up here in the final moments of this game as P-God now on the back foot. Ale King is dropped down, and P-God brings a great shot there. And now he's got all the loot in the world, as well as a teammate. A possible revive could come through. But nope, up onto the top of the ropes, Ace and Cup show up, say, this is our ground to stand on.
Yep, standing tall at that as well. And honestly, we've seen them so many times this game alone, third party, and clean up those important eliminations. Now they have 8 to their name, make it 9 as they continue to stack them up. Jackson gets one as well in the distance, so it's going to be a trade as our final 3 teams present itself. Ace goes down. Cup is going to be a solo left by himself. Jackson and Jetson, the only duo standing, as this one is going to go down. Can anybody step up to the plate and take down the duo?
Fatch looking up into the sky of a solo clutch possibility, and he's getting some big shots. That's a knock. Can he get Neelam? That's 2. He takes down the full duo, but it will not be enough to take down Cupsy as he says, you know what? The same strat you brought, I'm bringing it straight to your dome.
I did not mean to curse him, but Cubsy staying true to the strategy I said almost every single altercation he had throughout that game, or at least the ones that we did see on stream. They were smart and using their brains to third party a lot of these teams, and he does it yet again to take the game.
Absolute incredible gameplay. And Jacob, we're seeing these defining moments where we see those up into the sky kinetic blade gameplay and then bring it on home with a smart third party to then just change the entire pace of the fight that was once brought up.
Yeah, and that we talk about the living leaderboard. It's going to move Jackson J and Jatson into 2nd place for now, though. This is just for now. The leaderboard is constantly moving up and down as these players kind of break those 5-game threshold because it's 3 hours. It's the best 5 games that do count towards the leaderboard. So if you don't have the best game, if you get eliminated off spot, you got to be able to hold your head held high because you have so many chances to kind of pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and have another go around.
That's right. But in the meanwhile, we swap on into a different lobby of gameplay here. And unfortunately, we see a little bit of a tide of the fandom in the chat going down. We see Quinn taking down Ethan in the elimination feed. And chat, I don't know how y'all feeling about that one. That's a kind of a ways between the two. It's like, it's great for one team, and then it's like, for another.
Yep. It's kind of the roller coaster of emotions you go through, kind of being a fan for some of these players, myself included, you know what I mean? I'm a huge fan of Quinn. He kind of welcomed me into the community, open arms, you know, when I kind of made my first appearance on the FNCS broadcast, making sure I kind of knew a lot of the players, the names, the intricacies, the ins and outs of how things go. So that's somebody I'm looking at. Hopefully he can qualify here in his last chance, just like Kika and Jivy. They got themselves a nice spot at the edge of zone. Not too many teams are going to be positioned behind them. So as long as they can continue to pull zone at least close by with not too much distance to cover, I think they're going to be in a great spot.
Absolutely. As we take a look just on the lower third, on the bottom of your screen, folks, you'll see that cascading leaderboard so far. We have Volks and Vortex up at that first place spot, around that 230-point mark. So for a lot of these teams so far in the heats of what we've seen, the qualifying point ranges from heat number 1, we saw 362 points to qualify. In heat number 2, we saw 354. But in heat number 3, we saw 333. So the point total has consistently backtracked a little bit more as the best of the best now make their way through into the finals. So the point standard could be a little bit lower, which means a lot of more of your favorite teams that qualify, not only with the extended placement of that top 14, but also the little bit of downscale of how these players are in the aggressive of this lobby.
Yeah, beautiful breakdown. It goes to show that these games and a lot of these players cannot give up on themselves. They need to have the mentality of a champion if you're going to go ahead and try to qualify even for the finals alone. I always kind of said it myself, in order to be the best, you're really going to have to beat the best. And that means kind of going through different heats, going through the different competition and figuring out a way to come out on top. Vert and Quinn have figured out a way to come out on top in 4 different exchanges. They have 4 different eliminations. A great start for them in terms of elimination points, giving 12 to their total and trying to find themselves the best spot into zone. But immediately their bush gets destroyed and they're scrambling around. They hear some shots coming from the backside of zone. This could be an opportunity for them to try to third party.
Ooh. Vert and Quinn looking to make the same thing happen that they made in that Victory Royale game of theirs. Now looking to make it a possible back-to-back. And they're starting it off heavy with a possible mid-game frag out here. They're looking to get these elims. They have 4 already on the board, so that means they have plus 12 points here in this game for them. And they're looking to make it, might as well. Let's tack on a plus 2 here.
And while Raikou and Zayux are now the focus of the lobby, you see Quinn and Vert, instead of going on the chase, they kinetic blade to the backside and kind of refresh their position, so to say, before they kind of move right back in towards zone. But you see, because of what they did, they're no longer the focus of the lobby. Bronos and Oliver OG are treading lightly themselves because they realize they can't get too ahead. They know somebody is nearby in these trees. They know exactly which one because of the kinetic blade. That's going to be Sacred, just trying to bide his time. Bronos and Oliver OG, another team I'm kind of fans from, but I think this is going to be the chance. They're going to find Sacred. He's going to drop down low, take some HP damage as well, and could be an opportunity for them to clean up 3 more points.
Brunos and Oliver OG, a team that we saw get 17th place back in Heat 3 earlier today, looking to make a move. However, they're going to have to stand in the way of teams like Vert and Quinn, a team that has already gotten a Victory Royale so far throughout the day, feeling hot and ready to go, but so are Clarity and Casker at 10 elims so far. That is a grand total of 30 points so far in this game, and they're set up in a great position.
Yeah, getting a great position as well as 18 different splashes, 2 different legendary slurp juices. They have more than enough HP, but they need to be able to survive shot for shot, forcing them to go to the outside of zone, but catches Fusion on the tail end. That's Leo as well. A full-on wipe. 6 more points, but am I seeing this right? Let me shake off the dust here for a second. 12 elims for Clarity alone. 13 total for this team. If they don't qualify here on the day, Lash, I will be shocked.
The shock would be heard around the world if they don't, but one big difference, one big movement I think they're trying to make is shock the rest of this game right now, because they have everyone in their sights. They're in a good position so far on the ridge of this hill, just trying to scope out the rest of the area. They know Vert, Quinn, they know that team is on the other side of this bridge, and ultimately that's going to be the chasm that bridges between the rest of this lobby. The rest of this game is how well each of these individual players, as well as the full duo, can kind of play the realm of positioning.
You see them on the outside when it comes to Quinn and Vert. They're positioning. They're just not trying to give away too much audio of their movement. You see them just trying to go towards the outskirts. First shield bubble is going to go down. They know somebody is kind of waiting right at the top of that mountain for a moment for them to get caught off guard, but shots are coming in. That's Clarity Casker, as we talk about their aggressive nature up until this point. 13 eliminations, but you see, because of that position underneath the bridge, they're going to be one of the first teams to rotate, but they're actually trying to go back, and this is where, when push comes to shove, they might have to go up against Quinn and Vert. I don't know if they have the verticality to go up, but I was proven wrong there for that short moment. That goes to show that they have options to work with here, Lash.
They do indeed have the options as they continue to wait, seek out. Bakika, Jivy have now noticed they're there. The audio cue goes out, and now they've caught a bit of the attention towards opposing players like Zay on the other side of that bridge, and now they have to play the ridge to see exactly what they can do. On this side of zone, Vert, Quinn, they're lurking. This is a dangerous spot for any of these teams to be in.
Yep, one wrong peek, wrong move. Both of these players are going to get dud up, but when it comes to the position, if you look at your mini-map, Quinn and Vert do have the advantageous side. Caskers and Claire are going to have to move. They're getting chunked out for the zone for now. Everybody trying to think outside of the box, even rotating with that car, throwing the shield bubble at top and immediately trying to bob and weave inside and out. That called Caskers and Carity. They're going to be forced to move, and they found themselves a crevice to work with between a fence and a bush, but Jack spots one out. Nobody's really going for the elimination just yet as Caskers gets dropped by Rotten Twinkies. A huge chance for them to move up onto the leaderboard as he's bobbing and weaving in and out of the zones. He's able to get the knock on the one, leaving Jax by himself.
A close call there for a fan favorite. However, Jack goes down, and now that's going to be a massive shot there for Kika and Jivy to hold down this round. It's down to the final top two of this game, and it's going to be Quinn and Vert looking for a total of 2 VRs, and Vert has to solo clutch again. That's another huge shot, but it will not be the back-to-back as Jivy and Kika shut it down for the VR.
Quinn just took so much damage very, very early on in that fight. He was dropped in the blink of an eye. We got to give Vert so much credit there. He was able to drop that first player down in a well-played shot. He would have been able to go back-to-back, but unfortunately, zero builds, especially in zero builds, that numbers game is just too much for some people to overcome. But a second-place finish, Lash, that has to do wonders in terms of their positioning on the leaderboard.
It's so tough to be able to hold on to that consistency that is drawn. It's like nectar of the honey, just moving on through of these kind of situations where sometimes it's a little bit slow and a little bit of a elongated pacing in those moments. But then, once you get it flowing, it just keeps on going.
Exactly what you have to get into, a state of flow, where you can go through each and every one of these games with very little mistakes. And this was that play again. Cupsy going outside of the zone, displaces himself, forces a fight between two other players, and eventually wins that game. And this is kind of the same thing. They took down Jack. Quinn was the one who kind of started that fight. And look at this. Quinn just takes a huge tag from Kika to start this one off, that even though Vert did a good job of battling back, it just wasn't enough. And you got to imagine how much siphon he was able to get with that exotic Celerant Maven shotgun there to kind of keep himself alive.
Listen, I'm not going to lie. In those final moments, I thought Vert was winning that. The movement, the spin around, the 200 pump power coming through, I was on my edge. I was thinking, oh no, this might be it here for Quinn and Vert to go for the back-to-back. But fortunately, it worked out well in the end.
Yeah, and this is the moment I really say, depending on when your leaderboard, it matters so much how you formulate your game plan. But luckily for you guys at home and our competitors, we're going to take a quick break, give you guys time to get a snack, formulate some plans, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back right after this break.
Welcome back, everybody, to the DreamHack Open featuring Fortnite, as this competition is getting that much more closer. I mean, Jacob, you had mentioned a lot of our teams that are getting hot right now are only just in the beginning of their games, and it is just getting started.
Yeah, Volks and Vortex being one of them. Just shy of 40 eliminations in Heat 3, failing to qualify in a fraction of their games already. They're at 30 eliminations. Only the top 5 are going to count. And honestly, looking at the overall leaderboard coming up to this place, it honestly goes to show that we have ourselves close competition for our 4th consecutive Heat.
It is looking ultra spicy. And Jacob, I got to be honest, so far, this is the best Heat for me.
It definitely is one of the best heats that we're going to show. Kind of looking at the 30 eliminations, 264 points for Volks, Caskies, and Clarity. 5th place, getting at least 1 VR, 224. But when you're looking at this leaderboard, what names kind of surprise you? What names maybe don't surprise you? Business as usual?
You know, I say business as usual for Bizzle and Blake, right? Like I mentioned, I talked to them beforehand. They felt confident. And hey, they're up there in that top 10, but we take a little bit more towards that brink of the leaderboard scale where we see top 14, folks, is the qualification for these players, for these duos, to be able to make it to the finals on Sunday, which you all make sure need to tune into. But this is ultimately what cascades up to that, because this is the final opportunity, the last chance for these duos to be able to make something happen. And for a team like Jivy and Kika that we saw take home that Victor Royale there, hey, I mean, they're getting hot, Jacob.
No, they definitely are. With about an hour and 20 minutes left, so to say. That's just an estimate here that these players have to kind of queue into these lobbies. You see the threshold at 14th place, 206 points. Obviously, that threshold is going to continue to increase as our players get phenomenal performances to kind of round out their games, but this one is going to look like a continued North Pole. So for Volks and Vortex, as long as they stay towards the outskirts, they continue to pick up eliminations just like that as they find Rip Rah outside of the zone, separated a little bit too far from her duo.
They're just too good. They're showing up, flexing on that first place podium right now, as Volks and Vortex are just manhandling this lobby. Like, it's too easy for them, and they're holding down everything of Slappy Shores right now. Let's take it up a quick elim there. However, now they've got some danger around them. Hajj, Suscript, we saw them compete just in this past FNCS. Suscript in particular did pretty well alongside of V, but now here in Duo Zero build, it's a different kind of atmosphere where we see OCE on top of Volks and Vortex.
Yep, you see Disturbish kind of staggering himself. There's a lot of slap barrels here towards Slappy Shores. So honestly, if you really realize where a lot of those static barrels are at, where a lot of the heals are at, you can spend a little bit longer in towards the zone at Slappy Shores. Wait for everybody to kind of bypass you before you figure out your own escape plan. As you talked about Sescript and Haji reuniting here for this in-person opportunity. DreamHack San Diego, $250,000 up for grabs. And Reflection was saying it yesterday, $250,000 for a qualifier that leads into a $2 million in-person event for Zero Builds to kind of round us out at Gamers 8. So there's just so much up for grabs here that even if you did fail and kind of go down in the 3 previous heats, there's so much to look forward to kind of lock in now.
You know, Pin and SPG kind of brought up this question during heat number 3, and I'm going to bring up the same to you. Do you think if a team qualifies to finals and then qualifies to Gamers 8 in the top 10, do you think they're going to make that trip to Dallas, make that trip to Summer as well?
Yes, it's valuable practice. It can only go up from here, especially if you're talking about winning or getting into the top 10. You can kind of reinvest that prize money to go to Dallas. Like, these tournaments don't necessarily play out exactly the same as you see those Squad Zero Build Cups or the Zero Build Trio Field Cups. Those are not the same level, just like in the past where we talk about Elite Cups rounds 1 and 2 are not the same as a set finals lobby. So if anybody's looking to take this serious and they already kind of punched their ticket to Gamers 8 later this year, I would suggest getting as much practice underneath your belt in these real life scenarios, these actual tournaments that do play out.
You know what? If there was a retweet button on our words right now, boom, I'm hitting it. I agree exactly what you just said there, because ultimately, like you mentioned, it is the best practice. This is where you're going to get your reps in, so that way you can be one of those pink Anases who won in zero build, or you could be like that epic whale Malibuka lifting up that trophy.
Yep. At the end of the day, that's what really matters most, and obviously the bonus is going to be prize money. But depends on what motivates you at the end of the day. Is High Sky, Cam, they're going for those mythic overclock post rifles at the top of the Rift Island, but there might be a team either nearby in the building or right below waiting to rift, and that's one of those things to where you see a lot of players try to zipline their way up. I think the best strategy is kind of rifting at the same time, trying to take control of the top of the building, and then working your way down from there.
I see Loki in the elimination here, folks. Loki getting active. That's what we love to see. The hype is building, folks. The hype is building. It's going to be real interesting to see whether or not they make those moves. Hey, maybe we see them in the final moments of this endgame. We're just going to have to see the rest of this game unfold.
Yep, as the living leaderboard does stand, they're just 11 points shy of that threshold, but as it does update, moves up to 12 as Bronos and Oliver OG squeak into that 14th spot. Try to keep you guys updated as much as possible. This is 10, or I should say 3 hours to get as many games as possible with the top 5 counting. So as a player kind of beats their personal best in the last, they're going to move up on the leaderboard as Quanti and Threats find somebody floating around as a solo on the outside of zone. They take him out. That was Tamaki. So 3 more points to their total. 6 eliminations for them, which means they got to be sitting in a comfortable position in terms of in this lobby.
In this lobby, they're definitely feeling good, right? I'd be feeling the power positioning as well if I had that mythic pump shotgun. Jacob, I mean, I gotta ask, when you hold the wield of that power of that pump shotgun, what are you feeling, right? Are you feeling as powerful as Threats and Quanti in this lobby right now?
No, it does. It makes me feel like a professional player. Quanti, Threads, even the way Lame has been playing it until I actually shoot it and end up in a battle. Then I feel like my plain old self. I maybe hit a body shot or hit a toe. I don't do the 200 damage. In fact, it's I get 200 to get put down rather quickly. Cupsy, his teammate goes down to Jackson J. Yet again, honestly, Cupsy was able to clutch it out to get the victory around the last altercation they had. But this time around, Jackson and Jackson do get the best of them.
Hey, it's an all-around battle for each of these teams, right? You're gonna see one of the other once again, and ultimately, sometimes one is gonna push towards the other way of the other, and it's all about how well you can hold down your consistency. As for Jackson J and Justin, they're gonna continue to play a little bit of this edge zone. Now, utilizing these new 5th zone kind of rotations, be able to make the best out of your rotations.
Getting the best out of every inch of your game is just so important, because honestly, at a top level, you got to think mechanics. That's part of your skill is going to kind of reach a ceiling at a certain point. So then it goes to show your rotations, your positions, the decisions that you're making really does mean the difference. And hopefully these players are kind of progressing and learning through each and every decision that they're making. Loki and Ethan's doing just that, making the rotation with the shield bubble and their car safe as possibly can be. They're one of the teams that talked about just outside up until this point. They're about at 210 points, 19th place. They still have a little bit more work to do, but at least goes to show that they're at least on the right track.
I'm hoping the metaphor of them driving that bear truck on the ice, I hope it's just as nice as their gameplay. That's what I'm hoping for the rest of this game.
I'm hoping as well. Kind of slide their way in to a top position on the leaderboard as Clips and Sabotorian do go down overall, wiped out, sent back to the lobby. Luckily, there's still more time left to queue up. They can get another game in before it's too late. Volts and Vortexers just kind of hunting towards the outskirts. They bypassed the player they were looking for, but at least they're trying nonetheless. Lame and Suki do find it down onto one. Quanti gets the cleanup onto Jatson. Him and Threats so close each and every one of these heats to punch their ticket directly into the finals, but honestly, better late than never. It might have taken them 4 different heats, but this is the opportunity for them to really at least get their shot at 250,000.
Subki and Lame looking to get their feet back on the right pattern here in this game. Meanwhile, Bear, Flaws, in the midst of the building, now get in a bit of trouble here as Blizzy and Jaxie on the other side of that wall. The shield bubble battle will now break through, but they've got that Chug Cannon utilizing from the Chug Gunner augment as they're able to come through. And now it's a stalemate of the battle. Who's going to be able to take the right angle, the right peak, But now you got to be careful here because you can see, folks, those markers on the bottom left, they're starting to move. They're starting to move into that third party. However, the action continues to go out faster. They realize it quicker and quicker as the knock goes through the full finish onto Blizzy. And now it's a 50-50 battle of who's going to be able to take the shots. And P-God comes in now for the third party.
Eye flying out of nowhere. King and P-God wipe up one, but it almost cost him in the end. King almost goes down, but quickly reacting with Kinetic Blade. Shield Bubble going down. All of the splashes being expended to get themselves up to 200 overall shield and HP. And you see Iroh and Matt kind of deciding, is this something worth going after? They're going to kind of get halted dead in their tracks as they pop a shield bubble and really having to rethink, is this that they want to do? Is it not? Benz and Fledge working together, two different teams to take down Moody, who gets sent back to the lobby.
Let's see what Iroh can do here. We know this is a top-tier collegiate player that has performed very well in past zero-build events. Now teamed up here with Matbra. We saw them come very close into a qualification back in heat number 3 earlier today. Now they're ready to show up in some hot fire, but now they're starting to get burned a little bit here towards the top side. P-God and Ale King now starting to get in, and the shots align. Iroh now on the back foot, and the big beam will come through. Matbra now becomes a solo. Meanwhile, there's teams everywhere. It's a surrounding force.
Yeah, you saw just 1 second of hesitation coming out of Iroh. Cost him everything. He really wanted to try to keep Matt alive, but it was something that I feel like Matt was going to get out regardless. You got to think they're going to learn from that mistake as King and P-God here. They got a little bit of distance to cover before they found their safety inside of zone. Teams going to be on the eastern side of them. A few teams towards the west, towards the north side. That could be somewhere they're looking to go, but this is the sacrifice. This is the decision they're going to have to make. Towards the right side, there's a bunch of teams, but there's also high ground on that side. On the left, less teams, even least amount in the entirety of the lobby, but you go down, giving up that high ground.
Folks, we see Mama Benji Fishy in this lobby. Honestly, Jacob, I want to hear the Mama Benji Fishy fans up in the chat, right? This could be ultimately one of their best games of the tournament so far. They're chilling up there in the clock tower. Hey, I'm just saying.
Yep, to go. And Mama Benji Fishy currently sitting inside of the top 50. Rather impressive, I say so myself, especially since, you know, traveling from Europe, you got to imagine the jet lag really playing a role, but stepping up when it matters most. No build gets taken down. Lavish Lily and Ben starting off the day rather well, cemented themselves a spot in the 10, but since then they're progressively just falling down. But all it takes is 2 pop-off games here in our last hour and 10 minutes for anybody to really achieve that top 10 on the leaderboard.
That's right. Anybody has that last hope, the final opportunity to go in for those ultimatum shots. And now Mama Benji Fishy unfortunately gonna get knocked here, but Tago now has a little bit to backtrack off of, has the ice, the entire berg, if you will, to continue to make moves. However, when you have players staring at you like Lame, now on the other side, just kind of waiting for you to make a move when they've shown aggression all throughout the day, I don't know if that's a team you want to mess with.
No, I don't know either, as High Sky is in a position where he's by himself. He's trying to go towards the outskirts, probably getting some communication coming out from Cam. You can see he's actually choosing to kind of keep both the red eye and the pulse rifle, probably looking to go back for those shield bubbles. That's going to be one of my biggest questions that I'm trying to figure out. What is he going to go for? Exactly just that. 2 more. It's almost a must-have here in zero builds, especially if you're a solo.
What is High Sky cooking in the back of zone? That's the question that will have to be answered. But we're going to have to find out that answer as this 8 zone now starts to close on through. 30 seconds remain as everybody out of the sky throws down the shield bubbles. Meanwhile, High Sky, he starts cooking more. And he's looking to prepare a full chef's course meal here as he finds another elim out in the feed. But now shots continue to rain down. Tago on top of the hill.
Yeah, if Quanti and Threads could somehow end up on top in this game with a VR, I could see them bumping up because as it stands, they're in 43rd place, but this game has not ended just yet. 11 eliminations total, 33 points just off elims alone. They spawn Lavish, Lily, and Benz trying to close the distance. They're just trying to get in the car, hide out, maybe think they can kind of go unnoticed, but they get spotted out. Quanti begins to put out the damage. Lavish is going to go ahead and put himself in the driver's seat and try to escape, but Benz gets caught out. Taken down by the combination of 2 different teams. This is where Lavish Lily probably switched on over to the passenger seat and trying to just hide. Maybe they forgot about her.
Hey, maybe you just gotta hope and pray, but when Quanti and Threats are just on an absolute tear of the rest of this lobby right now, they take down Sweaty, a player we saw in the final moments of one of the few first games, now showing up once again based off of the top 50-50, trying to see if they can come out on top once again, and Threats and Quanti look primed for a victory here in this game.
Yep, finding 2 more eliminations, bringing their total to 13. Fame gets caught out on the outside. The only other team, they end up in an aim duel. Lavish Lily just bypassing everybody else. The zone begins to kind of move them in. She has her comfortable spot inside of the car, probably listening to some tunes on repeat. Uh-oh.
Listen to the tunes. Let's see.
Oh, hey,
what
how you
kind
doing?
of tune can be written, and unfortunately that tune gets cut off, and unfortunately they're just gonna have to rotate towards the backside. Threats and Quanti now back in trouble. They want to go up towards height. Quanti gets knocked. Let's see if Threats can 1v2, but it will not be enough against Fletch and Tiger to bring away their victory. That's now 2 on the day overall, but this is their first one here in heat number 4, and they're looking to show up.
He gets absolutely demolished on the tail end, spawning out Lavish Lily. At least they got something. At least they got 3 more points plus those placements before going down. Moving up on the leaderboards. I told you they were like in 45th place before that game. Interested to see how many points they actually garnered off of that game, because they only have 3 in their total so far. So you gotta imagine they're moving well up the leaderboards after that one.
Absolutely. And with Threats and Quanti being one of the best, if not the best, performing duo that has not qualified yet, you'd expect them to be up in that top 14 right now, but unfortunately it just not has been clicking up until this point where they get that second place, which will be massive. But Jacob, we got another crown favorite on our screens right now of Jack and Rotten Twinkies.
Yep, I need everybody be positive first off, but if you're a fan of Rotten Twinkies and Jack is Godly, show some support in chat. They're out the edge of zone. They got themselves a little bit of a bush to work with. You got to imagine that team on the right using their kinetic blades to try to close in on the distance. And I got to ask you, compared to the regular build mode, do you see a lot more teams kind of playing towards the outskirts, the edge of zone, rather than going directly towards the center?
You know, it's interesting that you bring up that question, because I do indeed, as we've seen a lot throughout the Zero Build tournaments, not only so far this season, but also last season back in Chapter 4, Season 1, where we see teams that ultimately want to make a big difference and a little bit of a shift in momentum. They decide to take something like a boat, go edge of zone, and then get up towards the top, especially in these kind of new zone format with the 12 zones rather than the original 9, and a little bit more of a elongated early game, especially combined with those heals. It allows for those kind of brief buffer situations to where you can, all right, let's stay back in zone here. Let's take this pass so that way we're not running in to somebody like a Prospering and Co. We're not running into someone like Threats and Quanti, because ultimately, if you know they're on your rotates, then it's like, yeah, I'll pass. I'm good.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I learned kind of like seasons ago, to where even Quinn just kind of always goes back to Quinn, and one of these fan favorites that he always talked about. It's not enough to know your drop spot. You have to know the teams that are around. You got to know their loot path, where they're going to rotate. Obviously, one of the more random things is the zone. That's something you can't necessarily predict. But if you know the tendencies of the teams around you, you can kind of formulate a game plan straight off of that. As we jump on board Pronos and Oliver OG deep into the zone, they were at least find a knock onto Ben Penn's teammate. They're not only going to be able to clean that one up, but they're trying to look for the second elimination. World Cup and Electrics get taken down right before our very eyes. That's Jack is Godly and Rotten Twinkies striking again.
Whoop, whoop. Big time elims up in the building here, as that'll be plus 6 points for this duo right now, for them to continue to work their way up in those leaderboards, as they are sitting and resting up in that top 14 right now. And every single game up to this point is just working to best them, as we continue to just emphasize the point that, hey, these players, these duos can compete at as many lobbies as they want to, and only matters and comes down to the points that they attribute in their top 5 games when it comes to leaderboards. So ultimately, for a team like Jack and Rotten Twinkies, this is their game where they're just trying to best the rest.
Yep, and as we enter into our last hour of competition, our 14th spot is being taken over by Bizzle and Blank. 241 points. They played 6 games so far with their least point total being 30 points with a 27th place finish. So if you guys don't know how it works, since they played more than 5 games, they have to get more than 30 points in order for their point total to go up. And honestly, that isn't too bad for them. They realized 241. They got plenty of room to work with. This game's going to be huge and monumental for them to solidify their spot in the top 10, not just at the 14th threshold.
Dangerous fight could unfold here, but it appears Bizzle and Blake don't exactly want too much part of that, or they just may have not noticed the two duos of Jack and Rotten Twinkies and Bizzle and Blake, two top-tier competitors, both within that top 14 right now, are just going to go their own separate ways as Bizzle, Blake claimed the best positioning, I'd say, so far in the 7th zone, Jacob.
Yep, team sitting in 10th place currently. This is going to be their 5th game, so they're only going to move up from here without 4 games. They got 254 points so far. And you kind of look at the game time when it comes to the pizza. I think that might have been the only heals. Didn't see too much that Quinn had on them. But Chimp and Bolt, something I'm still expecting more from, because all they have to do is outmatch their lowest point games. But he has the Mythic Havoc, 2 different Slurp Juices on the other side, 1 Slurp Juice and Mythic Havoc, so they could definitely pack a punch as long as they play their cards right. And I think for a lot of these teams, it's not necessarily the loot, it's not even necessarily the path, it's the decisions that you're making that might be holding you back.
And I like this decision right now from Leo and Fusion. You know, if this was me right now, Jacob, I'd be truck camping as well. I'd be mud flap camping with you, you know. Take alongside passenger driver seat, you know, we're hopping right in a truck.
Easy rotations, easy bit of cover. You just got to make sure you don't take too much damage. It explodes and it kind of costs you right there. That's kind of what happened to Threats and Quanti in that last game that we saw. Oh my God. They just got melted by that pulse rifle. 0 to 1,000 real quick, let me tell you.
That is facts. The most powerful weapon we have seen maybe in Fortnite history, as the Mythic Pulse Rifle is absolutely dealing insane damage throughout these games right now. As we see Oliver OG up in this lobby, now starting to make a difference here alongside Burnos, a team that has just made their way near the top 14, looking to make that big stamp on this lobby.
We got to do in a lot of these situations is Bright gets caught out. That's Leo and Fusion who find that elimination. Their first elimination of the game, but getting into the top 11 is going to be like around 30 to 40 points on placement alone. 3 more points being added to their total. Slow and Steady does win the race, but sooner or later, you got to put some fire underneath that behind and begin to get things going. We're about an hour left before those queues begin to close and the opportunities for some of these players begin to shut away.
Let's see which of these duos will now start to sense the immersiveness of this environment, of this game right now here for them, because this could be the difference maker. Rotten Twinkies looking out in the distance. Leo and Fusion now starting to get caught up in the mix, but Pamstu gets a massive shot brought back, and Thatch and Pamstu are now starting to regret that decision. They go back to the lobby, and Leo and Fusion are now feeling powerful in this lobby right now as they hold down not only the zone, but also the loot.
Bro, he got haymaker to the face. We started the 10 count. Leo and Fusion, like you said, making them regret going on to the hunt. But they know somebody's there towards the backside of zone. That is going to be Rotten Twinkies. Do they wait for him? That's going to be the question that I'm asking. But they have themselves a spot already on the edge of zone. They don't want to move too far. Rotten Twinkies trying to close in on the distance, forcing out a shield bubble for him, but all the position in the world is going to be given away. Raikou loses his teammate. He's trying to splash and keep the HP up so that way he can get that revive on sooner rather than later. Oliver OG and Bronos going to have to move up here rather quickly to get themselves into zone as it does begin to close. But they have around 25 seconds to work with to make a decision about where they want to go.
Let me tell you here, though, these are the bullets being shot and heard around the world right now from Oliver OG and Bronos with that Mythic Pulse Rifle, but now their pressure has now caused some other pressure, and it's now ricocheting. Blake will now drop down, so does Bizzle. So now we see Vert and Quinn drop down. Blake and Bizzle now drop down, and this leaves open an opportunity right now for any of these duos to now show up and show out here in this lobby number 2 of games.
Look at that, Z-Link. A miracle has just been given. They go up and over, trying to go for that loot. giving them a second chance at survival. The team terrorizing the lobby, 9 eliminations so far, probably in the best position to take it overall, especially with a knock like that. They find a second player in Raikou going down. One player was already weak. He got res back up into this 2v1 situation. Z-Link is going to be the last player remaining as a solo, and Bronos immediately takes him out. 13 eliminations and a huge big game victory to try to boost him at the top of the leaderboard. This is heat number 4 for Bronos and Oliver OG. It's all or nothing.
All or nothing indeed, and I feel it right now that they just rose themselves up into qualification range right now for Oliver OG and Bronos. This is looking incredible. 13 elimination victory royale. They just showed up. I mean, we called it just in that little bit of rotating into endgame drone shot. I was like, you know what? This team's looking prime. They got that mythic pulse rifle. They got that mythic havoc pump shotgun. And lo and behold, they took home the W.
Yep, and kind of talk about some of these teams. Blake and Bizzle, they needed anything over 30 points as we tuned on placement alone. They had 38, so they too moved up the leaderboards. This format is actually a really, really interesting one, Lash. You got to know when to abandon some games, when to abandon your teammate, and try to get into that next queue as fast as possible, especially if you already have 5 games adding to your total. And I think the majority of the lobby at this time does have those 5 games. Maybe 1 or 2 teams slipping by, have some ground to cover. But then that goes to show that at this point in time, it's just about outlasting everybody else, outmatching some of your Lotus point totals so far, and really having that big pop-off game.
Exactly, and it makes you kind of think, like, are any of these teams going to decide to switch up the strategies to go for a higher game? Well, we're going to have to find here shortly, but in the meanwhile, we got to ready up those battle buses because the last hour of competition is right on deck. But first, we got to go to a quick break. So folks, do not go too far because the action is just accelerating even more. We'll be right back.
in the heart of an ancient desert. The land of heroes awaits. Prepare yourself. To witness feats you never thought possible. Records will be broken. Legends will be born. And fortunes will be made. The stage is set. The largest esports and gaming festival the world has ever known. Ready or not, here it comes. Gamers 8, the land of heroes.
Welcome back, everybody, to the very beginning of the Fast Track to Gamers 8 Finals. As like we had mentioned earlier, this is just qualifier number 1, and we are just getting started. But Jacob, the folks at home, they got to know where to go to find all of the inclusive action for Gamers 8.
Yeah, if you guys want to know where to go, you guys see that little link on below. I'm going to try to point at it right there towards last, right underneath gamers8.gg. If you guys want to get yourself up to date with all the information, how to qualify, how to get your tickets. There are 3 different ways to qualify, though, is through the DreamHacks. First one that you're watching right before our very eyes is in lovely San Diego. It's right near my hometown. Hopefully, you know, I can go ahead and check it out. I know the beaches are going to be crazy for some of these people that might have, you know, the day off. If they don't qualify tomorrow, there's still so much to look forward to.
That's right. A lot to look forward to indeed. And what I'm looking forward to is these standings right now, because we see Volks and Vortex 303 just barely scraping and holding on to that first place spot. Meanwhile, Notch Source 300 points qualified into that second place spot, or not quite qualified yet. But like we mentioned earlier, each individual heat, Jacob, has dropped down in point scale. So a lot of these teams right now are just on the brink of that qual spot.
Yeah, I expect chat to go absolutely crazy. You got Rotten Twinkies inside of the top 10. You have Quinn and Vert inside of the top 14. A lot of our fan favorite teams getting the support. And it's thanks to you guys. Honestly, you guys really supporting these guys is going to be the difference maker from them possibly qualifying or not. But you see everybody outside of the top 14, 17 to 24. They still have a decent shot if they can start ramping things up, because this is the point in time. If you're not inside of that bubble, you got to start changing your gameplay. I'm not saying drastically by any means, but you might have to start ramping up the aggression if you're not having the placements you expected.
Absolutely. And I mentioned it to you earlier how we have these kind of situations where you can't have a quote-unquote WG game. You just have to play out your best. And let's see if these players can play out their very best. As you see right there on the reminder on the just left of your screen, 47 minutes and counting for these players to queue up into their final games to have their best performances yet to qualify into the top 14 placement spots for the finals tomorrow.
Yep. Almost in Heat 3, you almost got Oliver OG and Bronos qualifying through their last game. About 30 seconds left to get into that lobby. They found a way to make it work. Didn't kind of come out on top, so they go again here in Heat number 4, but they have just as good a chance as any. We saw them inside of the top 10 already, trying to secure themselves a spot. And unlike the other heats, instead of top 12 advancing, it is going to be top 14 to kind of round out our top 50 duos going into tomorrow to fight for over $250,000 prize pool.
And that's what makes it ultra spicy for a team like Cup and Ace, a team that's just barely inside that top 14 as they pick up 2 quick eliminations. A little bit of a bush camping action. They spotted out real quick, and Cup and Ace are now going to be able to rise up that leaderboard just a little bit more. Every single point matters, even if you get those 2 quick eliminations here in this kind of situation where you're in that mid-game buffer where not too many people are around and you can get your little bit of secluded refreshes, if you will. You can really start to make that accumulative big difference when it comes to that end game.
Yep, especially since you got to realize they're on that bubble for some of these teams. just outside, just inside. There's no feeling when we talk about that bubble that gives you a sense of comfortability, something that has you confident kind of going into our last hour. This High Sky and Camp just checking every single one of these bushes, and with some of the plays that I've seen throughout the weekend so far, that's not a bad idea to make sure to check each and every one of these corners, from bushes to houses. A lot of these roofs are going to contain some of these players trying to sneak by as well.
Hey, listen, when everything is on the line, when it is the last hope, hey, you got to do everything. Like, you're checking every angle, every building, every bush. It doesn't matter what it is. You're checking it because you don't want to get caught off guard. Because in the one moment, you know, when you don't check something, that's when somebody's camping in the bush. That's when somebody's camping in the building. And they're just ready, saying, ooh, you fell for the trap. I'm ready to beam you.
Yeah, you check the bush 9 times, you don't find anything. It's that 10th time that always gets you and always has you feeling like, man, I regret it. I should have just checked the bush. I should have just shot. I knew he was there, and that's one of the more common responses. I knew he was there. As Vortex and Volts continuing their aggressive nature into our last and final hour, trying to claim Rift Island, trying to go ahead and claim those mythic pulse rifles. You've seen how much damage they do, and kind of rounding out their loadout. Even though they don't have that mythic Havoc, they definitely have enough to pack a punch, and then the 2 shield bubbles kind of rounding out both Volts and Vortex to kind of have that little bit of safety. But an interesting loadout coming out from American Dad, one of my favorite players going into this, one of my favorite content creators myself. I kind of have high hopes. I think they can still finish it out.
I believe. I'm a believer, you know. This loadout is definitely interesting, though. You hinted towards it, the double twin mag SMG in the inventory for American Dad. Hey, maybe they know something I don't. Who knows? Maybe.
All about that DPS, getting out that damage as quick as possible. And honestly, instead of waiting for the 2-second reload on the second mag, switch your weapons. Making sure that he can get that DPS out, especially if he's the type of player that he does like to spray his weapons instead of just shooting one Havoc shot or a couple quick ones with the Maven or the Combat. Lame, though, and Soup Key, they've been doing a good job almost all day long, game after game, trying to cement themselves a spot here into the finals. But they've slowly, surely, kind of slipping it out of their grasp, but honestly, no time like the present to kind of make up for it. They got themselves a nice loadout as well, spotting a team in the distance. That's Casker and Clarity trying to use the shield bubble, vehicle rotate to get to a safer spot.
Roll and tumble there from Casker and Clarity with the Nitro Drifter just introduced into this new season of Chapter 4 Season 2. And I'm going to be honest, Jacob, we haven't necessarily seen the cards that much in this meta so far. It's not anywhere near like it was back when we saw Gamers 8 last year in 2022 of summer. It's not exactly quite to that level of how many cards we see in the meta, and I'm interested to see, is it because of the amount and the expertise that we see from the Kinetic Blades?
Yeah, I think the Kinetic Blade kind of replaces it versus the lack of mobility in the previous seasons. But you see it kind of being utilized for some of these players that even if they have the Kinetic Blade, they're just trying to think outside of the box. And I think we're going to see it more and more, if not today, here in the rest of Heat number 4, but at least make some appearances throughout our games in the finals. Cup C and Ace trying to reposition themselves. And honestly, that breach heavy shotgun, that's something that's very, very interesting to see. We saw it yesterday where they were just kind of tearing down those prefab buildings to try to spot out some players that are hiding nearby. It definitely does pack a punch, but just like its regular version of the heavy shotgun, you have to be as accurate as can be to deal the most damage.
And it's very interesting, too, when you bring in a little bit of a different atmosphere with those exotics that you can gain, not only with the exotic grab by element, but also when within those hollow chests. So when they're put to use, they deal some big damage. As P-God, though, in the midst of Mega City, looking for a big win here in the midst of the mid-game. Unfortunately, it's going to come down to connecting on the most crucial shots, and the Maven shotgun was just not powerful enough to go against those combat shotguns.
Yeah, Emma, Meow, and Tanka there. In that moment, P-God looking like he was able to take advantage onto one, hitches a ride, puts his thumb up, a little bit of hitchhiker action, but as soon as he leaves the car, you gotta give it to Tank to immediately abandon the car himself and turn and burn and take down both of their opponents. But Hector and Kirby see something everybody don't, landing some shots into the distance, but they're so far into zone, it is going to be a 2-tick. Slurp Juice is going to have to be popped, but in that same second, they just put the bubble shield on the car and immediately get out of dodge.
The ultimate getaway. They said, you know what? were gone. We'll see you later. However, Quanti and Threats were lurking out in the distance, but now, folks, we get to see American Dad at work. They've dropped the 2 SMGs loadout, and now they've got the shotgun back in the inventory. They said, you know what? We were just playing around. It's okay. We're back in the mix. We're ready to go, and we're ready to put some fear into opponents' hearts. Those opposing players, they dipped out with the Connect Blades faster than ever.
You have to be careful, though. Now they're kind of staggering themselves. Luckily for them, it does look like American Dad kind of popped game time. You see the splash. You see the pizza that kind of gets spawned out. But towards literally right behind him is going to be Moody. He's a solo, so kind of forget about players trying to traveling inside of the zone just like you. That's going to be a decision that you might regret here as American Dad. Just try to pop those chug splashes, get that little bit of HP and shield before he makes his rotation in. And we talked about Volts and Vortex and their possession of these mythic overclock pulse rifles and immediately putting them to use, whether you're spraying or hitting that single tap. It just does so much damage so quick.
Massive shots come through, but in the meanwhile, we see Kerbty pick up the elimination on top of Casker, who is just inside the top 10 here. But Clarity lurking down below. Kerbty did not see him at all. And now it's just going to be a little bit of a clear distance of whether or not they just said, you know what, he's gone. Gone, we'll forget about him. But Kerbty just keeps on dipping back. I can imagine the anxiety right now for Clarity G is high up right now.
Yep, still about 23 points for Clarity to try to garner if he could survive, but he gets taken down. Ace, they get 3 points plus the placement as well, which is about 1 point, so 4 total just for that fight. Trying to inch themselves closer into the leaderboard. Everybody wants that same chance to fight for $250,000 and that top 10 spot in the Gamers 8. The first of the invitations to be earned for some of these competitors this weekend.
That's right. They're fighting for it all, tooth and nail. And now, in these kind of last moments situations, this is where all the marbles are on the line, where your best game could very well possibly be a massive one. Threats and Quanti, who we saw come away with a second place on the day in one of the games so far, are now back in trouble. And Threats is going to have to live out without Quanti. Meanwhile, Lemon and Mellow Dubs continue to make their force felt along the lobby as 6 now gets off into the distance, and Lemon back in trouble. Mellow Dubs gets knocked, and now this is a tough situation.
Yeah, you saw them for a moment, too, trying to think outside of the box. They had an extra shield bubble. They threw it as far ahead of the zone as possible and tried to get in, thinking that was their oasis. That was their little bit of safety, or at least that they thought. But just like an oasis in a desert, it was just a mirage. It disappeared very quickly along with that shield bubble. And one of the players did get taken down along with Threats, losing Quanti moments ago. He's going to have to do it as a solo, but a couple of these players are already inside of the top 10 last, so they're just trying to beat those previous scores to try to hold on to their position.
That's right. Anyone within this top 10 currently is just making sure that they can pad around, that they can truly make their ambiance felt around the entire lobby. As Lame, Subki find another elim in the feed. Meanwhile, 6 and Sweaty now off into the distance. This is a team, a duo we saw very active in one of their games earlier in the day, now getting mixed up between Lame and Subki. This is a toe-to-toe battle we've seen throughout the day, and now it's now starting to get interrupted. Shield bubbles go out, and now the protection will battle back and forth once again. It becomes a bit of a stalemate here in this moment.
Yep, shield bubbles at the perfect time as well. You can see they're not getting too greedy. They know another team is on the right side of Sweaty. If they go a little bit too soon, trying to clean up that elimination, they'll just end up getting third party. They might just have to, honestly, abandon the opportunity to even go for that elimination, as you see the car making its appearance yet again. Volts and Vortex towards the bottom half, having to rotate. But High Sky and Cam probably having to make the least movement out of everybody. They still have some way to go, though, as they're just outside of the zone, as Volts and Vortex just ripping through the prefab building to try to figure out where these opponents are actually positioned at and actually take the advantageous position overall, but they're just kind of letting them slip to the side. If this shield bubble goes away, that could be it for Volts and Vortex.
They're not stopping, though. They get a big beam out of the distance, but High Sky, Cam, waiting for the opportunity to do anything to now jump into the mix, but Volts does not stop. The beam, the pressure coming through with that Mythic Pulse Assault Rifle. just absolutely shreds the builds, the cars, and everything in it of its sights. It does not matter where Volks and Vortex in that first place spot. They're looking for another victory royale here on the day.
And they're looking good indeed. Chasing around lame towards the outside, drops his shields relatively low, trying to use the chug cannon to pop himself right back up, but he gets spotted out nonetheless. 10 eliminations, but down goes Vortex, leaving it all up to Volks. He spots out High Sky and Cam on the other side of the rock, and you see the patience coming through. He's waiting for these two duo teams to fight, and that's when he's going to try to strike as a third party.
High Sky moves up into the sky, now waiting to take a moment to breathe. Cam goes alongside him, up into the tree. This is a battle we've seen where the tree hoppers now go back and forth, but the shots will now come through. This is where that pulse rifle is going to become that much more effective. The drop down comes through. Hector gets a big shot. That's going to be the duo cleanup. That's number 7 on the elimination board. And now it all comes down to the solo of Volks. Now Dipstack into the bottom of the tree. He gets a huge shot. Now leaves one more left remaining, but Kerbty finishes it out with the beautiful slide shot for the VR.
But man, Volks made that look so entertaining in a 2v1. I'm thinking, nah, he can't do it. As he popped and got the first down onto his opponent, I became a believer. I thought it was actually going to go down just like that Lash, but another big game from Bolts and Vortex. I don't think anybody's convincingly solidified their spot in the top 14 just yet, but if I had to put my finger on anybody, it would be that team.
I think that was the game that did it. I think they just said, you know what? All the chips on the table, let's bring it all together. And I think that was their game that solidified them in qualification standpoint. But we're going to have to find out after these continual lobbies keep on going. We have about 20 minutes or so, just a little bit more left on that queue. Therefore, a lot of teams like Oliver OG and Bronos are looking to just solidify their qualification spot in the top 14.
Yep, that top 14 threshold right now, and it's a living leaderboard, constantly going to change. It's 286 points, and that's going to be housed by King and P-God. They've already had 6 games played so far, but as I even finished that sentence, I called it a living leaderboard. It was snatched away. They're now in 15th place, and Pamso and Fatch have taken it away, got their spot in 14th place at 287 points. So it goes to show from the top 10 all the way down, honestly, is everybody outside of 300 points. Everybody's gonna be jumping up and down those leaderboards as we continue on in our last 30 minutes.
That's right, everybody's got a chance, and it's all about the drive that you bring, the passion that you bring, and that's what we've been seeing all day in chat throughout these games, where we see Quinn on our screen right now alongside Vert, who we've seen put up dominant performances up in the top 14, as well alongside another community favorite we've seen of Rotten Twinkies. Unfortunately, a solo right now, but each individual teams have been showing up today.
Yep. The solo points matter so much in a lot of these situations, especially for players that are on the cusp or on the bubble. They need to kind of replace one of their bad games with something, anything they can kind of grasp on at a time like this. And for Quinn and Vert, they already have 3 eliminations so far. They already sitting comfortably inside of the top 10, currently positioned at 8 with 370 points. So in order for them to get more points, Lash, they kind of have to beat, I think, around that 43-point threshold here in this game.
1,000% agree with that. 1,000%. It's going to be within those point thresholds where you can really start to make that difference, as Relay, Ecstatic, who we have not seen quite as much throughout the day, are now putting up a fight. They're putting up the beam. They have everything in their loadouts to win this fight, and that's exactly what they're going to put forth. They're putting their best foot forth right now.
Yep. That split second of pause between putting that kinetic blade to use is all that's needed really to land a big blow, but Ecstatic gets separated from Relay for just a little bit too long, and you see him trying to go back into the fight, but has no choice but to disengage and try to play his game out with so many other players here in this lobby as a solo. That's Alex and DNA. Gonna go ahead and take down his teammates, but you can kind of see they didn't really get much in terms of shields, in terms of heals to work with. Just a little bit of slap juices, which isn't going to get them up to 100 shields.
You know what? I'm a big fan of Slap Juice, you know? Jacob, I'm interested in your thoughts, because going into this tournament throughout the weekend of DreamHack San Diego, I was really thinking that we were gonna see Slap Juice, go through into the meta a lot more because it gives you that 30-second kind of infinite tactical sprint. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think people have been prioritizing it just because of how powerful those legendary slurp juices are.
Yeah, not only how powerful they are, but how many different ways you can actually get them, from the vaults to the Rift Island to the weapon cache. There's just so many legendary slurp juices. But I gotta agree with you. If you take out the legendary slurp juice, I think in both different variations of Fortnite builds and Zero builds, you're gonna see slap juice utilized just a little bit more, because not only does it allow you to get the 15 HP or shields, it allows you to move or use it while moving, but then you could stack 6 of them as well. So there's so many different benefits of that slap juice. Then you combine with the augment to where you can get a chance to get them out of any chest. But the slurp juices, like you said, they're just too powerful right now. They're too much in the meta.
It's very well the same exact conversation like we had mentioned with the cars and the Connect Blade. It's just one is just significantly better than the other, and you can't exactly replace it.
Especially with, you know, a chance at $2 million later this year if you get top 10 in this tournament, and then a chance at that 250,000 prize pool in this tournament alone as we enter into our top 8. Tomu and Ekomar do have a nice position, stealing away a little bit of that height from Quinn and Vert, who are seemingly there for a few zones. So interesting to see how that one was stolen away. But for Quinn and Vert, I don't think they would sacrifice a position like that if they didn't have some sort of trick underneath their sleeve.
Hey, if we know Quinn and Vert, they're always sliding a trick up their sleeve. Meanwhile, Pamstu and Fatch, the French-Canadian duo, is now looking to make big steps here in this lobby 2 of their game. Let's see if they can make it one of their top 5 games, because, folks, as you see on the left side of your screen right now, we have 30 minutes and counting left of queue of games for these competitors here today. So every single one of them know that these games right now, leading over to the next 3 or so, are going to be the games that matter the most if they want to be able to top their best right now and make their way in to that qualifying stage for the finals of the top 14.
Yep, and for a team like Pamsu and Fatch, they're not necessarily known as the most aggressive team in the lobby, but if they want to secure their spot into the top 14, they might have to turn on the aggression, or at least turn it up a few notches. See Quinn and Vert still on that low ground. Echo and Tomar, they have the high ground. They were the ones who stole it away moments ago. And then in the distance, Bronos and Oliver OG with a couple solos here in the game as well, trying to bypass everybody to kind of round out our top 7 teams. So it's actually two duo teams that are playing it out as solos.
Vert and Quinn just lurking, waiting for the lobby to essentially come to them. You can see there the zone on the bottom right half of your screen. It's about to start closing in here in 5 seconds and counting, as everyone's just lurking around, waiting for the next player to make the move. Rotten Twinkies just waiting for Exactic to now jump into the box. The pre-fire shots come through, and that's going to be massive damage there, and the full elimination. A quick cleanup there for Rotten Twinkies. Folks, get loud for Rotten Twinkies right now. The solo clutch, it's happening right now.
Yeah, notice the decision right now, leaving that Mythic Havoc shotgun on the ground, because he's hoping that the Maven, with how quick he can fire shot after shot, is going to do enough damage. So it's going to really be up to headshots for Rotten Twinkies. Toastiest Waffles doesn't have any variation of the shotgun at all, so it's going to be up to basically hitting consecutive shots with the twin mag SMG. But at least for him, it does have the gold variation, trying to throw some grenades to try to displace a couple of those enemies that he does have in front of him. But look at Oliver and Bronos just trying to skate by everybody else and squeak themselves into the final.
We'll see if they come in squeaking or if they come up roaring like a lion, especially against players like Vert and Quinn. Just creeping up on top of the building. Toastiest Waffles, though, in a very vulnerable position on the edge of zone, especially when Oliver OG and Bronos are lurking, waiting for the right opportunity to pounce. That's going to be a dangerous spot here, especially moving in. Here comes 9th zone.
Just on the edge of it at that. It's Vert and Quinn. You see slowly but surely, high ground. He's going to go over to Pamso and Fatch. They're immediately trying to run down, but into the hands of Rotten Twinkies. He did actually switch up that Maven to pick up the Mythic. He lands a nice one tap onto either Quinn or Vert. That'll put him in a great position here as he try to close out the game. Battle's going to be inevitable. Misses that first shot and quickly repositions with the kinetic blade. While all that goes down, it's Fatch who not only picks up one on a Toastiest Waffle, takes down Bronos as well.
Talk about a quick cleanup, but Vert and Quinn continue to hold down the position of the bottom side of the zone. Meanwhile, Fatch and Pamstu, we know up on height, waiting to make any situation. Rotten Twinkies lurking onto the right side. Oliver OG as well as a solo down below. Vert and Quinn looking in for a possible push, and there they go. They know they have the opportunity for a quick refresh, and that's exactly what they get. They get what they needed, and we're down to the top 2.
The top 2, you have it right, and both of these teams have already been terrorizing the lobby, but Quinn gets chunked out in the blink of an eye. It's all up to Vert. A great shot on the Papsu, but the 2v1 is just too much. They both get taken down, and our French-Canadian duo rise to the occasion. Honestly, those are big games for them because consistently throughout our heats, they've been failing to get into the top 12.
I believe that was just their game of Quinn and Vert to make the difference and finally solidify their qualification, because we've seen them get into those top 2 situations. It feels like almost every single game that we watch, but honestly, a massive performance, like you had mentioned there, from Pamsu and Fatch to clutch that one up.
See Fletch picking up a big game. Fletch was actually picking up some big games in Heat 3 as well. Got Chris getting taken down here in some of our replays. That's Tarif. Into the top 20 though. This is where it matters so much. In that top 20, this is where you got such few placement points, probably didn't get a ton of elimination. So going down at that position in the game, you wasted so much time for very, very little.
It's all about the realm of how well you time manage yourself, especially in these kind of situations where you run up into a team that just unfortunately is going to be above you, like we see on our screens throughout these replays, as we get a little bit of a glimpse, folks, of what the day has looked like so far to end off here in Heat number 4. And folks, this is just getting started as well, because we have just about 20 minutes left of queue for these players to continue on about. We have players like Vert and Quinn solidifying their qualification just about, but we have around that top 10, that top 14, they're scratching and clawing still.
Yeah, honestly, you mentioned the timer, about like 20 or so minutes for the last queue for some of these teams in this next lobby. It will be their last game for the ones that get into the top 5, into the top 3. It's going to be their last chance. So if you find yourself in a position where you lose your duo very, very early on in that game, you might have to make that conscientious decision just to try to get into that last game, get into a queue, leave it up to your teamwork to try to make that dream qualification work.
Now, this is where the strategy just continues to bubble up in your mind, and the environment must be interesting in there. We've talked about it so many times, like, what is it like when your duo is right next to you and you're trying to decide, hey, do we just have to back out? Like, what's our play here?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how everybody kind of adapts here on the fly, but as you see, the battle bus needs to get gassed up. Our final break of the show. Don't go anywhere, because on the other side, we're going to have our final games and our final 4 teams to make the finals.
in the heart of an ancient desert. The land of heroes awaits. Prepare yourself. To witness feats you never thought possible. Records will be broken. Legends will be born. And fortunes will be made. The stage is set. The largest esports and gaming festival the world has ever known. Ready or not, here it comes. Gamers 8, the land of heroes.
The land of heroes awaits to see if any of these duos will be able to have the chance and fight for the opportunity to qualify for the Gamers 8 finals. But folks, you gotta make sure you're following along the entire path, as just the beginning here. Make sure you're checking out gamers8.gg right there on the link below, all the way across, because you'll be able to see the entire wavelength, because like we mentioned, this is just the start.
Yep, it's just the start of something great. And you talk about the land of the heroes. This is heat number 4 at Lash. We've seen 36 competitors already punch their ticket in tomorrow's $250,000 finals. And somebody here at the tail end of that bubble is going to have to make some heroic plays, really step up to the plate and knock it out of the park if they want to call themselves one of the best. Otherwise, they may be forced to go again. DreamHack Dallas right around the corner, and another chance to get to Gamers 8.
That's right, but we got to talk about of the leaderboards right now, currently as it stands here for the standings. Vortex, they've already pretty much solidified their spot up at that first place, guaranteeing their qual up in that top 14, but you continue to follow your way down there. Fatch and Pamstu up in that 4th place spot around that 333. We just saw them get a victory royale, so that put them up massively. Same thing goes for 6th place of Quanti and Threats, but Jacob, as we continue to look down, this is where things start to get a little bit shaky from 9th to 16th.
Yep, you see it's just a few points, almost less than 20 in some of these occasions, a little bit more if you go all the way down to 16th, but that 14th place, 299 points. That is going to be the bubble for a lot of these teams and the point threshold that they're going to be fighting for. And for every one of these teams, they have over 5 games played. So it's not as simple as getting 26 points in your next game. You have to get 26 points over your least amount of points scored so far in this game. And for some of these competitors, that means at least getting the victory royale. It means getting a ton of eliminations just to get their spot in the final tomorrow.
Absolutely, and as we jump right into another game of this lobby number 1 of Q, these are the final moments, folks. The defining statement chance for a lot of these duos right now to start to make some big steps. Because ultimately, we were talking about it, how they're not going to need just a 30-point game to bump their score up. No, they're going to need to get a 60-point game, 30 points above their traditional 30-point game that's currently in their top 5 best games. So it comes down to them needing a all-or-nothing performance.
Yeah, and I think this game that they're playing out is going to replace one of their previous games, so it's all these points that matter so much. And we kind of called it before going into that last one with about like 15 minutes or so left to get into these last queues. Some of these players, maybe even some in this lobby that we're watching here, will not have another chance to queue up depending on how long it takes. So depending on where you're at in the leaderboard, you have to play into the situation.
And I'm interested to see whether or not Lame and Soupki, a team that we've been seeing a lot throughout the day, perform pretty well when they make it to the end game, and they have these kind of situations where they're rocking with that blessed pulse assault rifle there in the mythic variety up towards the POI rifting, and they're making big steps in these kind of situations. But when you're fend up against players like Threats, like Quanti, who are in that top 14 right now, that's where things get a little bit more risky.
Yep, you see for a moment there looking like they were at least going to try to take on Quanti and Threat, scare them away. A couple of shots going to be landed. Not much, though. And so as soon as those third-party shots did begin to come in, you see them start to kind of disengage. Second guess if that was the play that they did want to make, as Susscript and Haji are kind of getting the scraps. What is left over of the vault here in Mega City. And you can see there's going to be no variation of the Mythic Havocs, no leftover Legendary Sloop. So when it comes down to scraps, this is the pure definition of what's left over.
I see an elimination up there in the feed. That's going to be Bevy's, an EU hometown up in the elimination feed, as they are chilling currently up in that top 20 up positioning just outside of the top 14 right now. And I'm interested to see whether or not this all the way across the sea duo can start to make their steps, their names known. And as we're literally speaking right now, as we've discussed throughout the day, a living leaderboard, they jump right up into that 12th place position. And that honestly comes to the matter of fact, 9 elims so far throughout this game. There's only 14 total teams left alive. I believe that a massive game is up on the horizon here for Pablo Winyu and Bevis.
Yep. They continue to rise up on the leaderboard, you said, jumping into 12th place. But how close the leaderboard is, kind of put it in perspective, 14th is still at 303. So going down early in this stage of the game is not going to be something that you want, but you still have some time left to get into the next queues, and this is why those mind games that we were talking about before that last commercial break come in. You got to make sure that you're kind of confident in what you're going to do here in a lot of these situations. If that means backing out, trying to get into a game, trying to get into another lobby, especially if you got to realize if you need those eliminations like some of these other teams do and there's not enough players left in the lobby, that might be a choice you're forced to make.
The patience game awaits for a lot of these duos right now. You don't want to risk too much to try and get the biscuit, because it could end up coming to you if you just have that little bit of waiting game in you, especially like we're seeing right now. When we just saw Bevis, Pablo Winyu chilling in the bush, Fletch and Tiger chilling in the bush. Now, notice how they have the car. The only car, mind you, in the lobby, the Nitro Drifter, with those off-road tires automatically equipped to that car. So, in those moments, hey, when you need to make a quick getaway, that'll be your little bit of a buffer move, essentially.
Yeah, being confident to think outside of the box. You see game time augment being activated, box of pizza, and at least one chug splash. And honestly, Z-Link's already carrying them, so Krizik's probably trying to trade off more shots. And before they make their next rotation, which is inevitable, probably not right now because they're already in the zone, you can probably try and see them try to pop the splash. You don't want to leave any heals left over for your opponents, because they're just trying to surveying, scouting out. They're going to go ahead and drop the pizza as well, just in case. Can't use it, though. It's 150. You can get up to 50 shields with that, right, Lash?
That's right. That's right. And it's interesting, too, when you drop it down in that moment, you can't pick it up. Like, you can only pick up the pizza that is actually there automatically on the ground. You can only pick up 3 as well. So, in that moment, I don't know if that was quite worth it.
Yeah, I probably would have waited just a little bit longer, but being in the zone for that long, probably expecting to take some shots here sooner rather than later, as we saw Benz and Lavish Lily a few short moments ago, probably trying to get a much better performance than some of their other games so far. Move up the leaderboards as quick as possible. This is going to be the last chance for anybody to do so, as the lobbies are closing right around the corner. They're open for a little bit longer, so if you find yourself eliminated here in the next couple seconds, try to get right back in. Try to get the last chance. Here's Jivy and Kika. They got themselves a nice sweet spot, very, very close to the center of zone on the factory near Slappy Shores. A lot of prefabs, a lot of already man-made covers there that I think can bob and weave in and out. And there's a lot of different floors, different elevations, different windows they can peek through. So this is a great position, if I may say so myself.
A great position indeed, but folks, this game matters so much more for a lot of these players competing right now. About 8 minutes there, as you see on the clock on the left of your screen. And for a team like Jivy and Kika, up there at the 17th place spot, they need this game as much as anybody else, including Clasker and Clarity, who we see has played absolutely spectacular throughout the day, has gotten a victory royale, and now they're along with the same lines of around those teams of placement to be able to hold on to their qualifying spot.
Yep. Leaderboard just updated rather quickly. The point threshold going from 303 to 305. 2 points. Doesn't seem like much, but in this format, it is going to be a big difference maker for some of these teams. Casker and Clarity inside of the top 10, but not by much. They go down early on, and a couple of the teams right below have a phenomenal end game here. They can possibly get bounced right back on out. And honestly, in all the heat so far, Caskers and Clarity surprising me not already having punched their ticket into finals, but Zero Builds being a much different game mode than a lot of these superstars are used to playing. That's where you kind of get a wrench thrown at you. It's not what you expect to play, so there's a little bit of unfamiliarity going around the lobby.
And for Casker and Clarity, I mean, this is a duo that kind of, quote-unquote, underperformed during the FNCS, and now this is their time to show up and say, hey, you know what? It's time for us to overperform. Let's qualify now. Let's set ourselves up for a great finals performance.
You can see Jivy choosing to kind of grab that Maven instead of the Havoc that is towards the top. Kind of going to show that once these battles start and begin, getting that DPS as quick as possible is going to be so important. As Lame and Soupkey over towards the outskirts, using the car just enough to try to rotate in before quickly going right back with the kinetic blade. And honestly, that could have been something to try to distract them, make them think they left off of that position while they really actually haven't. You've seen a survey of the land. So many of our teams kind of stacked up over towards that Slappy Shores factory where the zone is actually headed.
We see Iroh camping on the bottom side of the Slappy Shores. Meanwhile, Bevies and Pablo Wingu, they hold down their fort at the moment. But the zone pushes opposite side of the way. This one's going towards factory side, and the rotations are going to have to be clean, especially when you have players like Casker and Clarity and other players just lurking, waiting for you to make the bad decision out in the open.
Yeah, the scary thing is, like you're saying, a lot of those players are already positioned inside of the zone, inside of a lot of those different buildings, hiding in roofs, around corners, using anything they can to kind of cover up their position. So being careful is going to be the name of the game if you're choosing to go inside of the slap factory. As Bevies and Pablo are going to choose to actually go towards the outskirts, but they still got to be careful. That's where Lame and Soupkey are actually positioned just a little bit right above them.
And this seems to be a little bit more claustrophobic than we've seen so far throughout the games today, where teams are now stacking themselves up. And this is what happens when you get those environmental situations here in Zero Build between these top-tier competitor lobbies, when we see Bevies and Pablo Wingu just lurking around, trying to find anything. Meanwhile, Casker and Clarity G getting active in the elimination feed. They drop down another duo as they pick up 2 quick eliminations. Folks, that's +6 points. And here in these moments where the final lobbies ensue, every point counts.
Oh, Clarity goes for the thirst on the knocked player, expending his shot, and it really costed him in the 1v1 against Z-Link, taking him down. They're going to end their run in 9th place. But Z-Link now has to continue his road show as a solo. Trying to figure out what is going to be the next item he does pick up. With all that loot around, he does have his pick of the litter. 2 players running around as solos for Tigera and Fletch. It's not going to be something they have to worry about. They spot a Kika at the top of the smokestack, chopping them both down, but instantly kinetic blades to safety. Not wanting to take down the fall damage, but I use safety rather loosely. Kinetic blades into the hands of Pablo Wingu and Bevies, who immediately take advantage, sending that full duo back to the lobby and make it a 3rd player. 6 gets taken down as well.
Pablo Wingu and Bevies say, hold up, wait a minute. This seems like our game, this is our high ground, and this seems like this is our moment to solidify our qualifying spot in that top 14. Bevies and Pablo Wingu, 12 eliminations. Now they have the rest of the lobby to continue to go through. This is where those placement points matter so much more.
Yeah, this is big for them, because with this game alone, I already said early on through the mid game, this is already replacing one of their lower point games, so they got to maximize this opportunity, get as many of these eliminations as possible, and win the game, because they're not in the most comfortable position now on the leaderboard, just on the top 10, in 10th place exactly. Fletch and Tigera, they need a big game to try to move into that top 14. They're currently in 18th place, trying to get themselves as many points as possible. If they could win out and gather some eliminations here, I think they earn themselves a spot into the top 14, but that's just a mathematical guess.
Anything is possible for these duos currently in this lobby, fighting for those spots, scratching for anything to see. Tiger and Fletch now move up. They try and challenge the Kings up on height. Pablo Wingu and Bevies but they don't flinch. They don't let anything to go off across. The zone's now pulling and twisting every which way. Iroh goes up for height. He tries to test it, but now dips towards the backside. Bevies and Pablo Wingu are just waiting to anything to pull in their way. Chug Splash is being dropped, but a challenger arises, and Matt Brugg gets taken down as Bevies and Pablo Wingu stay on top. But now it's all about the free pick'ems on low.
Showing the brains and the brawn, staggering themselves with those splashes, making sure everybody runs out in front of them. It's like taking candy from a baby here, but they're both weak, going in and out of the zone, taking more damage. Pablo Wingu and Bevies find another elimination onto Soupkey, getting themselves into the top 3. They spot out Iroh as well. 2v1 situation here for the end game, and they seal that deal with 17 eliminations and the VR to try to burst themselves into the top 5 even.
If that's a definition of how you do it, it is put on a masterclass by Bevies and Pablo Wingu. I'm feeling it right now. I'm feeling that hype. Chat, I hope you're feeling this one as well, because I believe they have just punched their ticket into a top 14 spot with that Victory Royale there. That is incredible. Stylish going up with it there from Bevies and Pablo Wingu.
Yep, that's going to be a huge boast of confidence, because I put out a tweet talking about what teams, what players do you think are to shine here at DreamHack San Diego, and it was Bevies and Pablo that kind of counted themselves into the competition. I expected them to kind of qualify a little bit sooner, but better late than never for them. All you need is a chance at that $250,000 prize pool to really make something out of nothing. First place getting $45,000 alone, the lion's share of it all.
That's right. It is incredible. Just seeing all you need is a glimpse of light, and therefore you can just sprint towards the end of the tunnel. But ultimately, that is the difficult situations for a lot of these teams right now. They're starting to see that light dwindle that much more. But for a lot of these teams in the top 8 right now, they're feeling a bit comfortable.
And we're in our final minute. You see the timer there. Shout out to DreamHack for letting us know when our last lobby is going to come to a close. And we're seeing the leaderboard. You see the threshold. It's Prospering and Merrick having that 14th spot threshold at 308 points. But you see 13th through 16th separated by less points than I have fingers.
And folks, that's the number you got to keep an eye out right now. Prospering and Murrock, 308 points there at the 14th place spot as we continue to look back there for Iroh and co. They just brought home a great top 3 there, but they're going to have to do it again in the final moments of their game. But Jacob, as we continue to rev up those battle buses here for the final lobbies, do you have a prediction of anybody outside of the top 14 that could make their way through?
Just looking out, you're talking about people outside of the top 14. We've seen some big games right now, just kind of looking at that threshold. As you see the leaderboard, 308 points. It has to be somebody at least within reach in my book. So I'm kind of looking at top 20 inward. I would think maybe I think maybe Fletch and Tigura can have a big game. Kind of looking at their games so far, their lowest point total is 37th. So honestly, if I had to be a betting man, which I'm not, I don't like to do it. I don't like to put my money in somebody else's hands. It probably would be then Fletch and Tigura. We've seen some big victory royales with Panda and SPG casting over Heat number 3. If they could somehow mimic that gameplay here, get into that final lobby, they can maybe squeak their way in for a chance at the money.
Listen, I hear you, but I'm going with the up-and-comers that we've seen make those end games. Now just need to wrap up the bow on the present, and that's going to be Cup and Ace. We've seen them in those final moments like we had mentioned. Now it's all about, hey, can they finish the job? And ultimately, that's the storyline for all of these duos right now.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, I think, a little bit harder for them as we kind of look at that score. They just got to beat 43 points. They have 2 different games on the day with 43 points. They got 14th place in both of those. So honestly, Lash, I like that pick. They could definitely do it. They solidified themselves a top 10 finish, maybe mix in some elimination points as well. They just need about, I think, 20 points over. So they need about like 65 points in that last game. Obviously, give or take where our players in that top 14 threshold actually place as well. So honestly, it's very, very possible for a lot of these teams in that top 20 still to solidify their spot.
Hey, listen, if we've learned anything from Fortnite Competitive, it is how well anything can happen. And now, folks, we finally get to see, will your favorite duo be able to qualify for the DreamHack San Diego Open featuring Fortnite. We find out right now the wait is over.
Yep, you talked about this team here. Early on, you see uncontested, very, very little to worry about when it comes to that. But we talked about this scenario, and 43 points, placement, and eliminations are going to be the name of the game. If they can find the perfect mixture of both, we see them playing in another day. $250,000 up for grabs tomorrow, and a spot if you place in the top 10 for a $2 million in-person event at Gamers 8. So there's literally so much to fight for. You got to make sure that you don't give up, because honestly, we could see some miracle finishes if somebody has the performance of Tripper and Scram did yesterday to close out the day. A high number of eliminations with a victory royale, a possibly 100-point game. I can go ahead and see somebody in the top 30. Loki and Ethan can maybe qualify if they drop 100 points. Actually, they can, honestly. Loki and Ethan, they get a victory royale, about 105, 110 points. They can qualify.
We'll see if they're feeling low key about it.
15 elim wins, something like that. They're gonna qualify.
The quick maths here by Jacob. As we see Echo, Tomu looking to hold down Brutal Bastion against Chimp and Bolts, a team that we have not seen, unfortunately, too much throughout the day, but looking to make moves here. As we see Super Moose, a fan favorite as well. Honestly, how can you not love Super Moose 76 right now? Unfortunately, getting caught up in the roughs here.
Yeah, getting caught off guard overall. And that's those little moments. You got to have that good early game. Let that confidence kind of ooze and bleed over into that mid game. But if you have like a bad early game, that's when you're kind of playing catch up for the rest of the lobby. Fletch is going to go ahead and take out Disturbish. I kind of broke down their position. A good victory with a couple of eliminations, not as drastic as some of the other players in the lobby. Anything is definitely going to be possible.
Possibilities are absolutely endless. And as we're seeing that storyline continue to develop throughout the day, Tiger and Fletch, we mentioned them just heading into this game, are now starting to become real risky in 17th place at the moment. Now have to be very careful here because they need a big game. They need to make this end game. But when Kika is knocking on your door, you better answer, or otherwise he's going to kick it down.
This is one of those situations, too, where Tigura might not be able to be the hero in this situation. He's the only one on this duo team with a kinetic blade, able to kind of get out of jail for free. But honestly, a miracle has struck. Third party comes in, scaring both Jivy and Kika away, which is going to give them a second chance at life here, as Jivy and Keek are actually going to get all the heals that they needed in that situation. But all over G in the feed, he goes down to threats. Bronos, again, has to kind of do it as a solo, and this is huge. They're inside of the bubble, but going down early gives everybody else that opportunity to take over.
Threats looking for the shots to go out. Bronos barely gets away, though, so Threats and Quanti will now spare another day for Oliver, OG, and Bronos in 13th place heading into this game at 309. Folks, remember, 14th place, 308 points. That is currently the number to be looking at of Prospering and Marok holding down to that top 14 currently.
Yep, Ice Guy and Cam trying to get a little bit more aggressive than they had in previous games. Currently at 270 points. They too are in a spot to where a high number of eliminations and a top finish here in this game could do them over into qualification, as Bubbles and Zenek with a little bit of high ground kind of slips down into the hands of Aya's Goated. Is able to get the knock onto one. 2v1 situation is going to ensue, but a teammate is just quickly using that kinetic blade to get out. Everybody here in the situation realizing this is the last game, the last chance, survival of the fittest.
Bubbles now continues to make the rotates out. Looks for the possible movement. But at this moment, Jacob, it is feeling environments right now. All in the midst. Every single person right now in this final lobby is now starting to feel the heat right now. Kika picks up an elimination in the feed. Again, one of our players just on the brink of that top 14. This is what it all comes down to, folks. This is what you've watched the first 3 heats for, all leading up to this heat number 4 right now. The final game, folks, keep your eyes peeled for this entire feed, all the way up at the top of the elimination feed, as well as everything happening on screen in this moment.
Yep, Bolts and Chimp, 263 points here. Trying to think, it's about like 309. They need 40 over their lowest, and honestly, they too, with 44 being their lowest point total up until this point. And I know this is very, very drastic, Lash, but I like to give everybody hope and kind of give them a win condition to fight for. But a 15 elim win is going to be something they're fighting for here. It is going to be their goal, and as long as they realize the situation that they're in and start going for eliminations, anything is going to be possible.
Hey, listen, we've seen 20 elimination victory royales so far throughout the competition. I got confidence that something of that nature continues to possibly fester up and possibly happen. Meanwhile, Quanti Threats. This is a team that is pretty much guaranteed their qualification spot at 361 points. They continue to frag out, but they take down Bronos. Oliver OG, I believe they might just be completely out of this game, chilling just on that 14th place spot at 309, and I don't believe it is enough to hold on.
Yeah. 309 was the threshold I was looking at going into this final game, so it definitely it's going to be scary for Bronos and Oliver OG, realizing they don't have control of their destiny anymore. Lavish Lily and Ben's a little late to throw the shield bubble down. Car's going to explode. Ben's is going to take so much damage. He even gets caught behind by Hector. So now it's all up to Lavish Lily in this situation. Luckily for her, though, even though she doesn't have the kinetic blade, she at least has those slap juices to try to not only get her HP back up, but that unlimited sprint for about 30 seconds.
Waits for the opportunity for any of these teams to pounce. This is a situation where we see Hector and Kerbti. We've seen them in the final moments of endgames. Now, can they make a risky decision to risk it for the biscuit and get that big reward with 3 points per elimination? It'll be massive for anything. A shot, a glimpse. Subki and Lame now looking to make their own move as they have defined themselves of ones to watch throughout the entire day. And now this is their chance to now find out, all right, is this our moment? Is this our game to make something happen?
They all but solidified themselves a spot into the finals. If they're trying to replace one of their scores, let me tell you, Lash, it's not going to be easy for a team like this. They've been on fire almost all day long. Their least points scored on the day has been 60 points. There's definitely have a ways to go if they're looking to break that, and it starts here with this battle. Lame doing a good amount of damage, finds the separation between the two. Moody Cryptic is going to be the first one that does get dropped, and both of them actually do go down. Soupkey landing shot after shot to wipe that full-on squad and send him back to the lobby with no games left to play.
2 huge eliminations. That's plus 6 points here for Lam and Soupkey. Now remember, folks, it's not a matter of how many points these teams get individually in this game. It's about how much this game pairs up to their other best 5 games of competition here today. Therefore, when in these moments, it's all about making this game your best performance by far, especially when it is that final opportunity to make it into the finals.
Yep. Leo and Fusion trying to do that same thing. A little bit more work for a team like this, sitting a little bit more down on leaderboard than you would hope. But 28th place, 253 points. Need a little bit more work than some of those teams that I said need a 15 elim win. They possibly need about 17, even 18 eliminations here. So I want to see them start to get a little bit more proactive on this lobby. Start to take advantage of players that might be just a little bit too separated from everybody else. Tigura, one of those players. Lost Fletch very, very early on, fighting tooth and nail for his own spot here in the qualifier. And you got somebody that already sitting comfortable at the top of the leaderboard right next to him. That's Threats and Quanti. Probably think they would qualify with as many chances. 13th and 14th place finishes throughout the past couple of heats. I think this is their time here in the 4th and final one.
Absolutely, and for Threats and Quanti, like we mentioned, they're sitting pretty. They're just kind of looking to pad on their placement currently. Meanwhile, we see in the elimination feed, Pablo, Wingu, and Bevies getting active. That's another one of our teams that's pretty much guaranteed their qualification spot at 353 points. Where compared to heat number 3, we saw a qualification which would or could have been that 14th spot, which was actually top 12. For heat number 3 was 328. So a lot of those teams around that 350-point range are already sitting pretty in a qualification range of spot.
Yeah, it seems like it's about the top 9 and up There's about like what 5 spots really left up for grabs here, fighting in this next game, and that's being generous, honestly, because I've seen some surprising photo finishes so far here this weekend alone. As Leo's taking so much damage, Quanti trying to close the distance, going up and around, trying to confuse where he's actually going to come from. This might be the perfect strategy. Spots him out, a great body shot, taking down Leo's damage once more. Shields getting dropped. Threats is there to kind of clean it up along with Quanti. That's going to be 6 more points to their total. And this is one of the teams that is just playing bracket busters to everybody else here in Heat number 4 because they already locked in their spot.
They're just squishing everything down below them, saying, hey, we want to be the kings of this lobby. Not only this lobby, but also the entire Heat number 4 right now. They're just showing up saying, hey, remember us. We've gotten a victory royale in the day, and we're not stopping there. We're trying to make this game ours as well.
I don't know who this guy is, but I feel like he's my brother. Every time I see his name, it's the same last name as me. Look at my brother go. Relay's going to get taken down first. Kind of loses track of his teammate. Connect Blades to a safer position, but Dala and my brother, RC, kind of laying it on him here as they leave Mega City. A couple teams are close by as well, including that solo player, but that duo team towards the outskirts. They could definitely try to be gatekeepers to what they're trying to pull here, leaving Mega City.
The zone continues to push on the back, and the question becomes, for a lot of these teams right now, do they hold off? Do they wait? Meanwhile, Subki and Lame, they appear to be the gatekeepers of this zone, as ours continues to now be in trouble here, and the shots rain fire out. They want these elims. They know they got to get them now, and the shots rain through. That's going to be a huge one, and a quick double pick there for Subki and Lame as they continue to pad onto their spot. 334 points coming into this game, now looking to make sure that they are one of the top 14 duos to qualify.
My brother going down, man. We're going to hear that over family dinner. Hopefully I can help him out. Maybe we can have a better go around next DreamHack here in the 0 builds, but Clips and Sabatorian trying to have a game of their life as well. There's a lot of loot they can kind of pick up using 2 of the slap juices before they pick up the med mist, kind of top themselves off, especially with the kinetic blade. But Bevies and Pablo and Goo still continuing their aggressive nature, taking down Krizix as well. Know his teammate is nearby. Quanti in the distance as well, trying to create some separation. It's actually a kind of combination, getting hit from 2 different angles. Quanti and Threats taking out Z-Link, Pablo Wingu, and Bevies taking down his teammate Krizix. Kind of getting separated and tore apart. The Threats and Quanti from one fight to the next. Quanti goes down, trying to escape. Threats realized the position they were in long ago. Tries to get out himself, taking a few more cheeky shots before doing just that. He's going to find himself a little crevice of safety here towards the low side, but is there any heals? Is there anything for him to work with? 2 different chests for him to find some goodies to work with.
We just saw a 3-layer battle over the POI rift and saying, you know what? Who's going to come away with this mythic pulse rifle in this lobby? And Pablo and Bevy just said, hey, you know what? This is our moment. This is our time. You know what? Let's run a little back-to-back, if you will.
Mine, is what he said. He takes him down, really taking over the position. Bamsu and Fatch trying to check out where they're at on the leaderboard. Right now, they have some sense of safety here. They're inside of our bubble, inside of the top 14, but going down here, 18th place, leaving so many placement points on the board. So many possible eliminations is not what you want to have happen. That's a situation you want to regret. So for them, French-Canadian duo, one of our longest-standing duos at that in the tournament, they're going to be looking to kind of play more of a passive game, something that is more into their blueprint of a duo, into more of their play style.
And from what we've seen in the past of FNCS's, even past 0 build events, we know this is a duo that holds on to patience and holds it down into a core piece of memory, essentially. I mean, it comes out in glorious light there when we see them just kind of chilling in the bush. It's like, all right, we understand that this duo is going to know the momentous kind of positioning around their spot on leaderboards. I mean, we saw it very similarly back in the Chapter 3, Season 3 FNCS Grand Finals, where they waited until the final moments of the end game to then pop off and show, hey, we're a top 3 duo.
Yeah, Pablo Wingu and Bevies was also one of those teams that they were playing under a different name during one of those weeks. They absolutely tore down the lobby. FNCS Major 1 during the 3 qualification weeks where you get those series points. They actually took over, which kind of prompted the name change, letting them know, hey, we're both free agents here in one of the toughest regions to kind of battle through in Fortnite. And they're looking to kind of claim their spot here in our finals for tomorrow, kind of adding more accolades, adding more to kind of what they can offer to any organizations, looking to add 2 powerhouse names to their roster. And you can kind of see game after game, they're fighting for those mythic pulse rifles. So it's interesting enough that they can kind of keep that same strategy going into the finals tomorrow, because they're one of the teams I feel confident they booked their final spot already.
Hey, listen, you know, maybe an organization comes through and sees the performance this weekend and be like, oh, not only do we get traditional pros, but we get zero build pros. I mean, we see people like Jade getting signed to PSG TNA, an incredible signing. Hey, maybe we see more of that on the horizon.
I've kind of seen the chat as well. They're helping us with the math. Hector and Kirby are going to be one of those next teams that is just outside of that top 14. And you got to think one of their lowest games up until this point is going to be 44 points. So in order to kind of overcome that 14th place position, they need about 48, just shy of 50 points to try to seal away that spot. But that can be said about so many other competitors here still in this lobby. Tiger and Fletch, Matt, Bruh and Iro, Jivy and Kika, Cupsy and Ace. There's so many teams still within reach of that top 14 spot.
The hope, the dividends, it's starting to now make its way into this game. Reminder, folks, this is our final game of the day for DreamHack San Diego Open featuring Fortnite. And now we get to find out here in these next final moments to see, all right, who are the top 14 going to finals? Every single point matters here, now, in this moment. And Lane and Soupkey are looking to make that theirs as they take a quick shots, a little bit of a test peek on the Lily and Benz, but they're not going to budge, at least yet.
Yep, Lily and Benz, they need to start picking up some of these eliminations somewhere, but Lily gets caught off guard, probably trying to do just that. And oh my god, Benz just gets absolutely melted by Lane, man. Suki just kind of tore right out of the driver's seat of that truck and sent right back to the lobby. I was going to say, man, they got to start picking up. They need about 100 points, 70 more to go, but you got to give them a huge round of applause. This was one of their highest scoring games out of the 5 on the day. And honestly, they started the day into the top 10. It goes to show it just takes practice. It just takes patience. I better see them in Dallas having another go around.
I'm ready for it. Run it back. Run it back. We're not even there yet. And hey, these duos are preparing their path and wave up ahead right now, because everything is practice. Everything is just the preparation for a moment that is very possibly up ahead. Cup, Ace, this duo we talked about very highly heading into this game, as they need quite a match to be able to show up as one of the top 14 duos here in the competition. They've got the loadouts to do so, and if I'm anybody right now, I'd be scared to fight them.
Yeah, they need to make it far into this game, but this is a huge battle for Hector and Kirby. Their qualification is on the line. One's going to go down. Kirby and Hector get dropped. Pablo Wigu and Bevies have just eliminated a team from contention of getting into that top 14 while they've already solidified their spot. That means the leaderboard after this one last is going to go absolutely bonkers.
That's right, and that's just the beginning of possible falls that are on deck. Casker in the elimination feed, picking up an elim, not quite falling though, and this is where we start entering the action of Fold, folks. You do not want to take your eyes off the screen for the next few minutes, because it's about to get that much more intense.
Looking at a few teams here.
Oh no!
Still with a chance. Caskers and Clarity go down. Are they in the bubble? Caskers and Clarity go down inside of the top 14 bubble, but it's not a comfortable position inside of that top 14. Quanti goes down to FaZe Clips, who needs a phenomenal game here. One more elimination of Sabatorian picks that one up. A huge moment for them to try to get as many points as possible. Threats closing in on the distance. He's trying to get that slurp truck, trying to get as many shields as possible. It is going to work out, all while being shielded by the shield bubble and the car combination.
Threats is just trying to push anybody outside of the possibility of qual right now. as he continues to make punishment held around. And I'm seeing deja vu right now. Bevies and Pablo Winyu up on top of the high ground of Slappy Shores. Is this looking like a very similar story here, Jacob?
Same old song and dance, and another team, top 10 versus top 10. Bevies and Pablo Wingu, they don't want to just take part in this final game. They want to take over overall and try to solidify themselves a spot. Pemso ends up in the wrong building. I talked about the dangers of the Slap Factory in that last game. If somebody has already got themselves a spot, going in there is just so dangerous. And I do see Matbra still alive. Him and Iroh can still qualify as well into the top 14. Chances go around for everybody still left in this lobby.
The fighting chance, the opportunity is alive as we see Kika, Jivy just lurking down below in the building. Bevies and Pablo Winyu are essentially making the wave patterns across the entire lobby right now. Threats Reswell back into the top 3 now continues to make something happen, as any movement right now doesn't quite affect him in and of itself. But Bevies, in the meanwhile, now gets caught up into the riverside of the action and now gets drifted away by the waves. Pablo Winyu now lurks off, becomes a solo, the same likewise as Threats.
And for both of them, though, they've kind of got themselves a comfortable spot inside of the top 10 as well. Trying to cement themselves, get that bit of practice extra before they head into our finals lobby tomorrow to fight for at least $250,000 in prizing. They know somebody else is nearby in Pablo Wingu, and you got to imagine so many other teams as well. The heavy breach shotgun to try to terrorize some of these builds, but misses that first shot. The dangers of the heavy. Pablo Wingu trying to take advantage and escape. Third-party shots coming in. Cupsy and Ace, one of the teams outside of the bubble, they need to start finding these eliminations. They only have one so far. Combine that with a victory royale, it could be huge for their momentum.
Coming into this game at the 20th place spot, Cup and Ace now need a tremendous game right now. Meanwhile, Pamstel picks up an elimination on the feed. That's going to be Iroh going down as well. But they will drop. Both Iroh will go down. That is another Brink team. They will now be out of this game, but so will Pamstu and Thatch.
It's all up to Matt. He's one of the only players left in this lobby that can try to burst him and Kika. And Ace still, there's 3 teams still fighting for the qualification spot to fight tomorrow. To fight for that Gamers 8 spot and the lion's share of $250,000 as the builds begin to get chopped away. And they see Matbra towards the bottom. This is huge. Matbra just needs to stay alive. One more placing here. He doesn't even need the elimination.
Kika as well, still alive in this lobby alongside Jivy. They're waiting, searching for anything. As Threat's still alive, just waiting to hold on to everything he's built up to this point of the Empire up there towards the top 3. And he shows exactly what everybody has down below. Ace and Cups now look for the shots above, as this is their game. They know they have to win this if they want to be able to qualify.
Remember, 309 was the point threshold for our 14th place team. Since then, we've seen so many leaderboard changes coming down into our top 5. 2 players, though, running around as solos. 3 teams have their full duo team. Ace is going to spot one of them right below, spots another one in the distance. So the full teams have all been spotted out. It's just the lonely solos that nobody knows where they're at.
Lurking off in the distance, Jivy and Kika hold down their shield bubble. This is what it's been all about through the competition. Who's going to be able to stand their ground the most? Jivy and Kika continue to wait. Cup and Ace up on height as the decisions will have to be made in these very moments as the 10th zone now closes in the next 20 seconds. This is what it all comes down to.
Did Matt get enough points? Did Matt get enough points to get into the top 14? That's going to be the biggest question as this game does come to a close. Cupsy and Aces, they still need a big game as well. Cupsy goes down. Zenik trying to sneak his way in. He's also outside of the bubby. Huge fight between him and Jivy going down to the wire. This looks like it could be a 1v2 situation. Jivy and Kika, they need this to qualify as well. A big moment as they take the game. But Lash, where do they fall in the leaderboard?